obviously clipping, always been a problem, never gonna go away probably. Clipping of like clothes and hair, like if I were to try to like high five you, it go
Go
right
right
through
through
your
your
hand, like
hand.
all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Yep, like that's all still there, and it's like I don't see that disappearing anytime soon. It would take a lot of work to make that disappear, and like in terms of the context of this platform, it's like it's not worth that much amount like money to fix that, right? I know it helps like the immersion, right? But like it really is only a big problem for filmmakers.
Hmm.
That's like the biggest limitation that I personally don't like the most is like the clipping and inability to actually fully interact with another avatar.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Sweet Talking Podcast with me, your host, Nepherti. This is episode 70, the first episode of season 7. So I really do appreciate everyone who has been supportive of my content thus far. Thank you for everyone who's been supportive of everything we're doing, and to getting us this far has been a pretty massive undertaking. But hey, we're here, episode 70, and I'm very, very excited about my guests tonight. All my guests have been wonderful, but I very much am looking forward to speaking with this particular guest this evening. But before we get into our conversation this evening, I do want to thank my community for being very, very supportive of my content. Those of you who have been the realest ones, who've stuck with me for however long, thank you very much for supporting me, especially through what is now officially pretty much a forever subathon in this case. I really do appreciate you guys being so supportive and really having my back and just being there for me. I really do appreciate it. I honestly couldn't do this without you guys, and I wouldn't really be doing this if it weren't for you guys. So thank you very much for your support. I also want to take a moment to quickly thank essentially my sponsor at this point, Patreon. I have a Patreon at patreon.com/Nepherti. Those people who have been supportive of me over there have been instrumental in funding this project of mine, this labor of love that I've been doing for now 70 episodes. You guys have really been coming through where essentially YouTube has not. So thank you all so much. I don't want to spend a whole lot about that. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time there. I'll talk about that closer to the end of the podcast. But I just want to quickly say thank you to everyone who has stuck with me and has been supporting me thus far. So we're going to get rid of that. We're done. We're done talking about that. And we're going to get on with talking to tonight's guest. Tonight's guest is someone that I have been watching for, I would say maybe like a year and a half at this point. Just keeping an eye on what they've been up to. And I'm very, very thrilled to have had the opportunity to speak with none other than Khang, Khangaluwu, if that's how it's pronounced. Hopefully that's how it's pronounced. Is that about right?
Yeah,
Okay.
you can just call me Khang. That's what most people usually do.
All right. Hell yeah. But it's very, 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 very awesome to be able to sit with you and chat with you this evening. I'm very, very excited to talk with someone who has a hell of a lot of experience in doing VR films and just the art of crafting beautiful works of art, visual works of art in the VR space, because it's not easy to do. It's not easy to do. I mean, anybody can do it, but to do it at the level of your Studio Penrose, and we'll talk more about that. To do on that level it's pretty significant, and I'm very, very, very much excited to talk more with you about all that and hopefully more. But yeah, as always, I do like to do a little bit of a kind of an icebreaker, a little bit to kind of like ask. I like to ask my guests. We actually met pretty recently. We crossed paths relatively recently, maybe in the last like I want to say maybe two or so weeks ago, perhaps something like that.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, and it was very much a chance meeting. We had a certain blue dog kind of facilitate that. I've been very, very fortunate to have the creator of Omegascape and Omega themselves to be very, very generous with like the people that they know, and just kind of introducing me to really, really wonderful people, and to be introduced to you it was, very much a pleasure. I maintained my composure. I wasn't fangirling too much, but but I'm curious to know. I always ask, like, what was your kind of like initial thoughts about me, like when we first met and how we first interacted?
Okay, we met at a music event, and so I can tell that you like to have fun, and I don't know, you were just really chill, like super chill.
Oh yeah. I mean, honestly, that's the right. I mean, that's what I hope to portray to people, because I do try to be very chill, very like open. I try to be. I think I'm pretty easy to chat with too. So I'm glad that we could have a little bit of a chat, get to know each other, and essentially just make this happen in a relatively short period of time. So I'm very, very glad that you were willing to make time, especially after like what I'm sure was a pretty significant undertaking with the 2025 VRChat Film Jam. That was, I'm sure, a lot of time, a lot of preparation, a lot went into that, and we'll definitely be talking about that for sure as well. But before we get into all of that stuff, I typically like to start things off with asking about the person themselves. I like to get some insight on who they are as an individual, who they are as a person, and just how maybe their approach to life has led them to where they are now. So just kind of a little bit of a background. So my first question for you is, if you had to introduce yourself to anyone in VR chat, and I know people are generally very kind of low key with like their introductions. I'm just another player. Obviously, I get that. But if you had to kind of explain to someone who is like legitimately curious about who you are and what you do, how would you go about introducing yourself?
Yeah, I think I'd probably bring up Studio Penrose. Be like, hey guys, I'm Khang. I'm studio lead for Studio Penrose. I do filmmaking VR. Also one of the co-hosts of the filmmakers of your chat group. And at that point, usually someone would ask like, what is Studio Penrose? What is the filmmakers group? What is a VR film and stuff like that? And that's usually how I just introduce myself. And yeah, because I answer a lot of questions after that point, and they're always like very different.
Okay. Nice. Yeah, I would imagine people would be very, very curious about, like what goes into, running a studio and involving yourself in VR filmmaking for sure. Yeah, that would definitely be an interesting topic for many people, I would imagine. So, about your name, how did your name come into being? Where's that from, and where does it come from?
Yeah, so my name has my real name in it, and originally I got like a nickname in college and high school, which was a combination of my first and last name, and it was just Khangaluwu. It was like a joke about like kangaroos or something. I don't even really like kangaroos, but that's beside the point.
All right.
And when joining VRChat in 2019 is when I actually like first played it. I'm pretty sure, or it was 2018, something like that. When I made this account, I wanted to like shitpost because it was just for fun, like VRChat back then. I would go on just to like joke around with people and friends, and so I just threw an ooh at the end so that people couldn't find me easily, like from college and stuff, because my username is like similar across a lot of social media platforms, and that's where that came about. And I never changed it because people were like just laughing about it for a while, and then I just got used to it, and I was like, okay, I'm just gonna go with this then. So that's where that started.
Okay. So it was a ploy to escape the watchful eye of your friends, so they wouldn't know that you'd be dabbling in VR chat.
It was a mega shitpost.
Okay.
That's all it was. Yeah.
All right. That's fair. Okay. Like, that's very interesting that like someone who like I guess there's no real correlation with shitposting to being creative. I would imagine that someone who like would like to have a little bit of fun as well, like on top of like being like very hyper focused and creative, because like you just kind of want to fuck around sometimes. You don't want to be like very hardcore and serious about things. So I guess that kind of makes sense. But yeah. So with regards to like your I would say like your avatar and like your persona in VR chat, for someone who is just kind of looking to shitpost, how did you kind of land on this kind of appearance and look?
Yeah. Well, okay. You know the VRChat pipeline joke?
Oh
You
yes.
start with like a shitpost avatar, and you go
Uh-huh.
to like a very realistic looking avatar, then you go to an anime-esque avatar, then you end up in a feminine presenting avatar.
Yep.
That's basically how that went. When I joined in 2019, it was literally just, I didn't actually do anything serious with the game. I was just used to hang with friends and meet people. And it wasn't until like, I guess, whatever 4 years ago was, 4.5, that I actually started doing the film stuff. And so around that time was when I like switched over to like, like a booth avatar. But it was like an early variant back then. And then eventually I just went through like a bunch of avatars till I landed with this one. I have like a particular avatar style. My friends kind of make fun of me for it. It's always like red, white, and black because those are my favorite like color combos. My previous avatar to this one is the avatar that we used in one of our films, and it has like red and white and black hair, and that was the one I used for quite a while. And then I switched over to this model and Uriki just because I really like the appearance of it. I can change my face, like blend shapes to match my like physique. I try to match my avatar's like, I guess like physique with my own, just because it's more like, I don't know, immersive that way.
Mm-hmm. So your goal ultimately was to have an avatar that reflects who you are IRL, more or less.
Yeah, basically. Obviously this one's a little bit more feminized, but I just like to have like the same proportions. Basically, is usually what I try for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can definitely understand like the immersive factor of like having an avatar that really kind of does that. And I have found that people in VR chat tend to like when they choose a humanoid avatar, they typically try to stick with one that's reflective of either their proportions or reflective of their soul in some shape or form, like in some way. Do you ascribe to that at all, or is it solely kind of like a reflection of like who you are IRL?
Bit of a mixture. Like I also kind of design avatars based on like film and what I like in film, or like character design. Hence why I like horns and stuff on my avatar, even though it's like obviously not related to me in real life.
Of course.
And yeah, I guess this was kind of recent, like the way I changed my avatar decorations, because I had an e-boy like avatar era too back in 2020, because that was one that was more normal.
Mm-hmm.
And so like it's gone all over the place.
I mean, I just from like the sound of your voice, I can see you like in an e-boy avatar. Like I can see people like being down for that.
Absolutely not.
Really? No, it doesn't. That
nah, it was like, even then my e-boy avatar wasn't like e-boy. It wasn't like one of like those, like I don't even know how to describe it without like
hyper masculine, super buff,
yeah, like bodybuilder type stuff. No,
right.
I wasn't like that, but it was like a TDA base, because that's the phrase we used for those back then.
Okay, gotcha. All right, makes sense. Okay, so with regards to like just like what you do now, comparatively speaking, what were you up to before you started doing the film stuff? Like what were you, well, not what you do in VR chat, because I do want to talk about that like in a little bit actually, but what in IRL, like what were you like doing like before VR chat, like entirely, like yeah.
So right before I joined, I was in university, and so like I started university in 2017 and I graduated in 2021, and so I joined VRChat in the middle of that, and so I was like trying to like balance like university work and then hanging with friends in real life and then the game itself, and then online friends as well. And oh man, that was actually really chaotic. And so I went to school for mechanical engineering, and which is like I just get a kick out of saying that, because like it's not even remotely related to film or anything like
Yeah,
that.
it's
I don't have a film background.
Hmm.
And VRChat, at the time I didn't join for film stuff either, and so I was just going to school. That was basically all I was doing beforehand, university.
Okay. Yeah, mechanical engineering. That doesn't sound very creative. I mean, is it creative? Is there some creativity involved in that? I'm not really sure. But what would you say?
It can be. It depends what you do. Like mechanical engineering is like the really broad degree. Like it can be anything basically. You can design like boring things. I don't know, like sinks, or you could like design like rocket ships essentially. And so like it depends what you choose and what you land in your job, but it's like creative but in a different way. Like there's artistic creative and there's like kind of design and like I guess like engineering creative, which is like, oh, I can come up with something really cool that could be really useful to someone. Whereas like with the film stuff, it's more like artistic creative, like I can design a scene that can be really emotional to someone. And so it's kind of similar but like different, like very different.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. All right. So, did you enjoy it? Like, was that something you're passionate about? Are you still doing stuff related to that now?
Yeah, actually, yeah, no, this is an interesting thing to talk about because I kind of went through like different phases. So when I was young, I actually really wanted to do like movie stuff. Always have.
Hmm.
But I'm Asian, and my parents, are more supportive of a career that's more stable. And to be completely honest with myself, like I just don't think I have it in me to like do Hollywood type stuff, anyways.
Hmm.
I enjoy the film stuff as a hobby, and I think when you start like doing all the very stressful things of career related stuff with that hobby, kind of becomes more just like a job. And so I was completely content with going into like the engineering side of things. And so I went to school for that. And the film stuff kind of took like a sidetrack thing for a while. It was just a dream, basically. Didn't do anything with it at all during high school and college until, the film stuff happened here. And so I still do mechanical engineering as my actual job. Specifically, I chose doing like railroad design as my career path with mechanical engineering.
Mm-hmm.
I design like train systems and like how they all operate together in the U.S. But like that's where I can still maintain like a steady money flow and have the film stuff job. That's kind of what I wanted. I didn't want to like, stress about film in the way that like trying to pick up a job in Hollywood. That's not fun at all.
Okay. Yeah, I can definitely understand that. Like, I get that. Like wanting to stick with what you're already doing, like for a living. You don't want to make the thing that you make as a hobby as your job. But like, I would say that some people would want to do that. They'd want to like, they wouldn't want to work for someone else. Like, I was always of the mind that I didn't want to work for someone else's dream. And like I had a very kind of similar kind of track as you did with like wanting to do voice acting and then not really doing anything with it until I got out of college, and then kind of like doing amateur stuff at that point. So like I definitely understand like kind of waiting and putting it off to the side and still kind of I'm working a million different jobs because I wanted to be an actor, like very very early on. So like that was like, aside from voice acting, like acting on stage was always something that I found very, very thrilling to do. It's a lot of work, but it's something I've always enjoyed doing. So like I definitely understand like putting that kind of stuff off to the side and like leaving it for just doing it as a hobby. And I guess that's kind of where I ended up now, like doing what I do now, which is somewhat of a hobby, but it is kind of my livelihood now. So yeah, so I also get not wanting to get into the Hollywood stuff. That can be real messy. I'm sure you're aware. So like there's enough of Hollywood stuff going on in VRChat for what it's worth. So
Oh yeah.
So
Don't worry, I know.
Okay. I'm glad you're aware. Like I definitely like know about it, even if I'm not like very heavily into like the film. At film side of like VRChat, there are other ways that like it still exists. So yeah. And we can definitely like, chit chat about that maybe at like post section of the podcast. We'll see what you're thinking about that. But for the time being, I think we can kind of jump into your time in VRChat and actually like how that I guess trajectory has changed from when you initially got into VRChat compared to now, because I have this feeling that what happened for you is very similar to what happened to me based on what you've said already. But rather than me assuming, I'm wondering basically like where things went with you for like how did you get started in VRChat, basically?
Yeah. Okay. So I think I said earlier that 2019 was when I officially joined. I don't 100% know if that's right because I actually had an account before this one that I joined in 2018 with, I'm pretty sure. And at the time when I first did that, I joined because I saw like funny videos on YouTube of people like, you know, a lot of like just, not just trolling, but like you know, like people making skits and such, like joking around with each other, like live action type stuff, like live action roleplay. And that's what got me to like try it out. And so for a while I just kind of did that. I hopped on, met people. It was just to hang out with new people, meet people, all that sort of stuff. And then afterwards, I like about a year or two in, I want to try like new things because I found out that communities existed. It's not just like people in public worlds, you know, back then when public worlds were actually like you could go and like, actually meet people.
Yeah, it was very commonplace.
They were like oh yeah, no,
yeah.
It felt a lot different back then. And so I started like dabbling in like communities and like roleplay communities and stuff like that. So I just popped around a couple of groups for a while, and then I started like doing other community stuff. Like I don't know if you remember what VRCon was back then.
I remember, yeah. I didn't know what that was until very recently, but I do know. Like I've heard of it fairly recently. So yeah, I never went though. Before my time.
Yeah, it lasted a few years, yep. And so I did some stuff for them for a little bit. And then eventually I found like the film side of things and I joined my first studio group. And that was kind of where it all started for this trajectory, I guess.
Okay. So it was another like film group of people who were like doing filming in VRChat. And around what time? What date was that? Like when people were doing filming around that time?
Oh man, see, I remember that Studio Penrose was formed 2.25 years ago, but I don't actually remember exactly when I joined that group. And that was, it was 2 years before, so 6 years ago. Oh man, I feel old.
Yeah, that's 2019.
No,
if it's
4.
6.
Wait, no, sorry, 4
4
years ago, not 6.
Okay, so yeah, that would be 2021. 2021.
20 and 21 sounds about right. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, like I remember back when like I came in around 2023. That was when I jumped into VRChat. So like but I've seen videos where there was no camera in VRChat. Like for a while there wasn't.
Oh.
Yeah. So like I'm actually kind of curious like how like filming went in VRChat like that early on, because obviously we didn't have nearly the kind of robust features that exist now, and I'm sure VR Lens didn't exist back then either. So like how did that all like come to fruition, and how did you kind of get into that, and what was that like filming in that early on in VRChat?
Yeah. Oh, so I remember it was with the very first VRChat camera that we used. Like the original VRChat camera. It was like really clunky. Basically the only thing we'd do with it was point it in a direction and like hold it, essentially. But VRC Lens has been around for a while actually. I think I did like VRChat camera stuff for like a half a year before we actually transitioned to the VRC Lens. I don't remember exactly what year that came out, but it's been around more than people think. And so that's when we switched over that. But that was like, you know, the older VRC Lens as well. And it still had a lot of similar functionality, but it was still like a lot newer at the time. Just imagine a lot of clunkiness. That's how it used to be.
Okay. Gotcha. All right. Yeah, I mean that makes sense. Like that kind of like learning about VRChat's history before I came to be as Nepherti. You know, basically that's like it's very much how I kind of learn about how like the things that I didn't get a chance to see and didn't get a chance to experience. So like that's really, really cool. So like what I guess after you found that film group in VRChat, was that just like the thing that you're like, oh, okay, I'm gonna do this now. I'm gonna like just dedicate my time to this. Or are you still like doing other things?
Yeah, you know, I should probably just name the group. So it was Metacosm Studios that I first did like actual film stuff at.
Okay.
The previous roleplay group is when I actually first did my own like video thing. I did like a little like police series early on, and I did that for about a year before I joined Metacosm. And then it was when I joined Metacosm that I actually like fully committed to it, because it wasn't just, you know, I'm doing stuff with the roleplay group and then doing videos for them. It's now like I'm doing full films here. Like this is my actual commitment. And so that was when I actually like committed to it.
Okay. Yeah, I've heard of Metacosm Studios. I've indeed heard of them. So when it comes to just VRChat in general, well, I guess we kind of know what kept you here, but I guess before the filming stuff, you know, was it just like the idea of being able to be in a VR space, just kind of goof off and have fun? Was that generally what kept you here?
Yeah, that and good friends. I had a friend group when I first joined, and it was like kind of what kept me around for so long, especially with like no other activities that do, you know. And so it was jumping around friend group to friend group essentially that was the highlight of those years before like I did anything with like an actual community.
And like, do you feel that like, is your perception of VRChat different than it was back then? Because like, you know, the platform has changed quite a lot. Many things have changed. A lot of you know, innovations have been made in terms of like groups and the sense of discoverability. The like kind of like the dissolution of public spaces to more like group publics, in that sense. So you know. What are your thoughts about like the platform in general and like your interactions with it over the course of, at this point, we'll say like 6 or so years?
Yeah. Well, I think, okay, this is probably a very common like opinion, but obviously I think we all know that VRChat's changed. Like what it used to be in 2019 is not what it is now in 2025.
Of course.
For me, like the change, there's a lot of good and bad. Like I mentioned earlier that I used to spend a lot of time in Publix. I don't do that anymore. Like I cannot go into public without being insulted or something like that happening, or witnessing something really just heinous, you know. And so instead of going to Publix, I usually go to group Publix now with like groups that post that sort of stuff and like moderate Publix. And even then, I don't usually do that too often because it feels it's a little bit different, you know. It's not as easy to meet people in public situations. Like most of the people I've met recently are friends of friends, you know, and going through them, or going to like community events and stuff like that is how I meet people now. And so that's kind of the kind of part that's kind of like changed in a not so great way. But I would say what has gotten, I think, improved a lot better is like the communities themselves. Back then, I don't feel like there used to be a lot of community stuff done. Like I said, early 2019, you know, the game's still really fresh at that point. And so it takes time for platforms to develop like groups and communities and events and stuff like that. It's a lot more lively now, I would say. Like there's so many different music events you can go to, dance events, there's so many different groups you can be part of. Like filming is just one side of stuff. There's music, there's dancing, there's like just content creation is in general, there's asset creation, world creation, like the worlds, you know, like there's so many more gorgeous worlds nowadays. Like you don't even have to, back then you could just like search a key term and get like maybe 100 max, you know. But like nowadays you get like thousands of different worlds. And so like as a platform progresses and ages, like this is a natural thing to have happen. Like there's a lot more content, a lot more communities, not a lot more groups. But with that, you get like less closeness with like public instances, as an example, and obviously the tech has increased too. I didn't have full body until like 4 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And like I think it's really great that you mentioned that little detail of like, it's very difficult to, to get close to people or like to get to know people in public settings nowadays, because like I think this is kind of an overarching theme of like technology, and not just in VR, but just in technology in general. Like we have become far more connected in terms of our ability to reach one another than we've ever had before in a history of forever. And now, but we're also like the least, like we're just as disconnected. Like the ability to have that sense of connection with somebody and build that doesn't seem as possible anymore, because there's so many distractions and so many other ways that our attention gets taken away, and I guess we tend to devalue the experience of meeting somebody new, because we're just so used to meeting however many people all the time. And if we have a bad experience, we could just go to a different group and call it a day. There's no real sense of, I guess, desire to commit to actually communicating and connecting with somebody in this space. Like, what? And is that kind of like generally how you feel about like public spaces these days? And like, I guess I would say like in like technology in general.
That's a good question. I'm trying to like piece this together because it's so like unique. Like social platforms in general are very like dependent on the time of like the era, like the people, and like what gets people onto said platform. Like, so the reason why I can't fully answer that 100% yes or no is because I keep forgetting that like COVID happened
right
during the biggest growth of VRChat, and I think that's probably why things felt a lot different back then. You had like a bunch of people flood into the platform who wanted to socialize because they couldn't get it in real life, and so it was probably a lot easier for people to meet people at that era, and that kind of makes sense, and that's why there were so many people, usually like adults too, before the Quest era happened. But nowadays I think yes and no to your statement. I want to say I feel as if it's not as easy to meet people, but you can get lucky still. Like I've done that, like going to public and getting in a conversation with the right people. You just have to look for them. It's harder to find people. It's not as easy to make close connections, but it does happen. It's just, let's say the playing field's a little different,
Do you think that the film side of VRChat is generally pretty welcoming to newcomers?
Oh yeah, no. I know I'm a little biased because I've been leading this group of like film people for a while, but I like this community a lot more. It's very welcoming, and like generally speaking, when you have like a niche like community, it tends to be a lot more close-knit, and that's kind of how I view this film community, because it's still very like niche. The Film Jam did a lot of like spreading the word, and so we'll have to see how that affects the community over time, but right now it's really welcoming. Like we're all like here to help each other. I host like workshops all the time to like teach people stuff, and sometimes people DM me about things to get help, or I let people like shadow my film sessions too at the studio, just so they kind of know like what it's like, I guess. And yeah, no, it's pretty, I think it's probably very welcoming because of how small it is,
So like how small comparatively would you say to like something else?
Good question. So it's hard to fully gauge this, but so the Filmmakers of VRChat Discord, as an example, we have like, I don't know, 1,500 people in there. I'm pulling that number off the last number I remember. And like in terms of like VR film production studios, there's only a few out there. In terms of people that have like been very dedicated to producing film, that's their thing that they do. There's still only a few out there, you know. People like make videos, but it's not like, oh, that's my thing. Like I only do film and VR is my main like deal that I do. And so that's why I kind of consider it small compared to like, let's say the music scene, like DJ scene. There's so many clubs and so many events and so many DJs and so many musicians. Like there's no way I'm gonna even be able to name like all of them, you know. And so that's why I kind of compare it to that. It's like, okay, we're very small, we're a niche group compared to the music scene as an example.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, just kind of give context for people who may not know, and I guess also for me as well, since I'm relatively unfamiliar with like the size of that. So you mentioned the filmmakers of VRChat. How did that come to be?
Yeah. So a few years ago, three of us, me, Ariel Emerald, and Gab Jenkins, we were like, there needs to be some sort of group to like help people with this stuff, because prior to this group being made, there was no like real unifying group. There were a couple like smaller ones, but they never really took off. And so we wanted to make a group and make it very like publicly inviting, so that we could like find people to work with or teach people how to do this stuff. And with film in general, like especially with this sort of medium, we like, the way I kind of view it is like it's a budding medium. It reminds me of like machinima. I bring that up a lot. Is like, if for those who don't know what machinima is, it's like the old era of YouTube when people used to make skits and movies using games. Like if you can imagine like filming a skit in GTA, that's what machinima basically like had a lot of stuff like that. And similarly, we kind of do the same thing with film. We have like a platform that we use to create our films, and it's not one for one. A lot of these machinimas kind of follow the plot of the game that they're filming on. But with us, we do it differently. We're just making our own films, utilizing this technology as a basis for the medium. And so, like we wanted to get more people into it. Because we're so small, it's gonna be really hard for us to get it on YouTube. YouTube is a very unforgiving platform.
Yeah.
It's not a very popular thing. You know, it's kind of hard to take off. And I mean,
don't I know it?
The studio.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Every creator, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially VRChat.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Don't even get me. Try to look up one of our films just by finding it by typing in VRChat on YouTube. I can assure you, you're not gonna find it. VRChat, like as a tagline on YouTube, kind of got like destroyed with all those videos.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I know.
And so it kind of messed up like a lot of things for us. It makes it harder for us to take off, and that's why with my studio we're going a different approach. We don't actually market our films as VRChat films. We don't put that in the title. Not to say that we don't want to like appreciate, you know, how the platform, you know, assists us with making the films, but more so to say that for the sake of the platform itself and the community itself, I don't want to like tie us too heavily with the typical YouTube search. Is how I'll word it. I want to connect it more to animation, and I can talk about that later too. But all right, that was a little bit of a tangent from the question of like
connection
VRChat, but.
Yeah. Well, filmmakers of VRChat, yeah. Well, I mean, that's fine. That's perfectly like that's something that I relate to. You know, I've been doing this podcast for 70 episodes, give or take. There's kind of a bit of a gap, but I've been doing it for 70 episodes basically, and it's extremely hard to be found. Like you would think that because because it's such a popular search term that it would be more likely to be found. No, it's not. Yeah.
We put in the tags, you know, we just don't put it in the title.
Yeah. I think that's the play. I think that's generally what has to be done. Maybe I should like try to do something along those lines, but you know, we'll kind of wait and see about that. But otherwise, yeah, that's really cool. Like Filmmakers of VRChat is just a way for people to get together and exchange ideas and information and techniques to make films in the space, and that's really, really cool. How long has that been around, actually?
Oh man, see, I'm so bad with time. Like, I bet you I've already messed up some of these. I mean, I did with the 6 years thing, but I'm probably gonna get some eye rolls. But I'm pretty sure it's been around for like 2.5 years, is my guess. Studio Penrose was formed 2 years ago. I know the Filmmakers of VRChat group was longer than that. It might be 3. Yeah, it actually might be 3. No, it's about 3. I think it's 3. That sounds about right. I'm probably wrong, but that sounds about right.
Okay, I mean that's fine. You can't get everything right. Cannot get everything right, but that's
yeah.
that's okay. But yeah, that's super cool. So with regards to VRChat, from like a player perspective, do you see VRChat as a game or something else?
Ooh, that's a fun one. So, it definitely has varied. So, I guess when I was at Metacosm, I was grinding this shit. Is the best way I could put it. Doing a lot of film work, and I didn't do a lot of play on the game. Because around that time, like after VRCon, beginning of Metacosm Studios, I was a lot more focused in like production and like doing this seriously than I was with like just playing the game as it was. I mean, obviously we'd still like go hang out in VRChat, go to events and stuff, but it was a lot like I viewed it a lot differently. Maybe not in the best way, because I just do work on here, but
no, well, tell us about that. Tell us about that.
Yeah. Okay. So. I guess, okay, if we want to dig into the history of the film stuff, I can start with Metacosm. So, like I said, I did some stuff beforehand, a police series, like about just 2 characters, police officer, VRChat type thing. It was really just laid back for fun. But my very first, like, officially, like, super serious film I did was Voicemail. And that was the first film that I released at Metacosm Studios. Working in a community dedicated to that sort of thing and working under people is a lot different, and so it was a lot more it was a lot different. I wanted to like get our film somewhere, and at the time it was like, and this was like 4 years ago, right? So it was very niche. The film stuff was very niche. We were like practically the only big studio that was, actually no, we were the only like big studio that was around doing that stuff at the time. And so there was multiple directors with multiple projects, and we were just doing that work, a lot of people, a lot of projects to do, and so I had a lot of stuff going on at the time too. I was really busy, and so I was just constantly doing this stuff, and I thought I was like overworked. Now some of my fellow like filmmakers were also overworked too. And yeah, it was a time. It was definitely a time. New merging thing. We want to like do stuff with it,
So I think we like, and that's like learning more about that is very cool. Like hearing about like your past with Metacosm, I think is really interesting. And like we can talk about Voicemail and further detail later on. But with regards to like VRChat being like a game or something else for you, like I would want to hear more about like what that is to you, like how you make sense of that. Like, what do you see it as?
I definitely didn't answer that one. Okay.
That's okay. It's fine.
I don't view it as a game. Necessarily like it's not necessarily like a game. I view it as I don't even want to say platform, because platform just feels too like corporate, I view it as a second location where I can hang with my friends and visually see their movements. In terms of like doing work in the space, I kind of view it similarly to like real life. I do hobbies in real life too. I have other things I do aside from filmmaking, and so it just feels like another another world. That sounds weird, but is that kind of the answer that you were looking for? Possibly, maybe.
Well, the thing about that question, the reason why I like to ask that question is because I think everyone comes to their own conclusion about what VRChat is to them, and people are different. There are some people who do see VRChat as a game, in whatever context they understand it. There's some people who see it as a social platform in whatever context they understand it. And I think the social platform aspect is the more commonly known answer that I receive. But there's no one answer. There is no right answer. There's only your answer. So, that's generally what I was looking for. So, thank you for sharing that. Like, it's seeing it as another space, another space and time, that you exist and do things and create things, and I think that's pretty reasonable. And I think that's what I think is a lot of the allure of VRChat as a whole. People logging in and finding their own adventure, like writing their own story in a way. Like, do you ever feel like in VRChat, you as Khang, I know it's related to your real name, but I guess as you exist here in this other world, do you feel like you've been writing your own story in this space, or is there some crossover with IRL?
Oh, that's fun. Yeah, I think yes and no. So it, for the most part, has been very much like writing my own story in this platform. But what has been happening is it's no longer just here. So all the people I've met on this game, are people that we've met on this platform, right? But I've started what we do now at the studio is we usually do like an IRL meetup every year, once a year. Sometimes I visit other people periodically as well. And with our films, we've taken some stuff to film festivals, and so it's completely different to see your film on a film festival screen in a theater in London, for instance, right?
Right.
And so that's where it's it is a story on this platform, but it's crossing paths with real life now. And so I wouldn't say that I only view VRChat and my story on here as just being on here only. I do separate what I do in VR with my real life with friends, because a lot of friends from college, they would not understand the stuff that I do. But even then, even now, I'm starting to kind of break that seal a little bit. I've told a couple of my college friends about the film stuff. I've told my parents about the film stuff, so they all know. Some of my family knows as well. And so, let's say I think my story started fully in VRChat, but then it began to cross out of VRChat recently, basically.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I mean, honestly, I'm not quite sure if maybe that's the ideal form of being. You experience VRChat and you exist here for however many years, and then being able to cross over into IRL and bring the people that you've met and the experiences that you've had into IRL. I wonder if that's perhaps the ideal way of approaching VRChat, because there are a lot of people who just spend hours and days and weeks just no-lifing VRChat in a very arguably unhealthy way, in some ways. And I think it's important to remember that reality is still a thing that exists, and perhaps the crossover between the two isn't so bad. What do you think?
It's a lot different when, it's definitely a lot different when you meet the people that you've been around for so many years. Even though Studio Penrose was formed 2 years ago, we've all known each other since 4 years ago, sometimes even longer. And so, we've been hanging out in person every year, and so it strengthens the bond. The whole deal about, okay, I know this is so off topic, but I just want to point it out, relationships in VRChat.
Oh, yeah.
How, some people don't have, that end goal to meet them, and I always tell people, hey, you want to date someone, you should probably be okay with meeting him at some point, unless you don't want this to last long.
True.
It's like a similar sort of deal, because it strengthens like the bond. It's not just online anymore. You know the person, you feel a lot more connected with them. That's naturally how humans are made to be, you know? And so it's a similar sentiment for me, why I value it so much and why it's so like important to me to meet people.
Yeah, and I completely agree that there are many people who, the idea of, you know, having any sort of like friendship or relationship with someone for some people doesn't even cross the boundary of like, well, maybe I want to meet them in person one day. Maybe this is actually something that I could care about. But I guess in some cases, perhaps it's not something that people will come to understand or appreciate until after they've maybe been with the person for a year or two, or, you know, perhaps it just takes a little bit of more time to kind of get to that point. And also like the idea of like our relationship with time in VR, I think is also really interesting in that way too. So I'm kind of curious as to like your thoughts on like I know you mentioned like I'm you know, it's hard to kind of remember timing of everything. Do you think that's because of, you know, just a personal thing that you know, even if you were in VRChat you'd still struggle with like time frames, or is it because of your time in VRChat and the way I guess our relationship with time in this space kind of differs from how we interact with time in reality? Like, what do you have any thoughts of like just how time is in VR? If that's something you've thought about at all.
No, I definitely understand that. I want to say that I think, okay, I kind of view them similarly, like basically the same. I just have a bad memory, which is why I like suck with like exact timings of stuff.
Right.
But I do treat like the events and what I do in this platform as like the same like importance of like my life and like the time frame of it. And so, but another thing to keep in mind, I think, is that because I used to do like so many different things in this game or in this platform, things get clustered a lot more than it would in real life, where I wouldn't probably do as much as I do here. Like, imagine like filming for 4 hours and then going to a club later. That is not happening in real life. Or, I mean, for some people it would, but not for me. You know?
Yeah. It's definitely like a weird space to kind of exist in, and I think that's what makes, you know, this platform, this space so interesting. So I want to jump into talking about the film jam and what that was like and your role in that. So all I really know for certain is that you co-hosted the screenings of the 2025 VRChat Film Jam. That's literally all I know. So if you could kind of fill me in on your participation in the film jam, and we can kind of start there.
Yeah. So actually, yeah, I never really fully talked about this in detail. The film jam preparation didn't just begin like right before the first announcement was made. It was like it started a year ago basically, with VRChat. I think it was actually like January or something. We had our first like meeting with VRChat to figure this out, and it was it was me and the two other co-hosts of the group. We were like planning, okay, what should this look like? How long should it last? Like, how should we judge things, scores, like how the judging system should be, who should we select as judges, what are the workshops that we should do ahead of time. Like, it was a lot of coordination stuff that started like a year ago. And like with my specific role, I've done this sort of thing for quite a while. I do like community stuff in general, but like that was the very first thing I did was community stuff, like leading stuff. I did media stuff as well, but I've had a lot of experience with like operations of like events and stuff, and so I say that, but I also don't like hosting events. Like, I'm not an event person. I just know how to do it. It's not like my forte, you know. I usually have other people do that, but so that was what like the beginning of the planning stages. We would meet every month and like set up things. Like, we had to plan, okay, translators. What if people need to have their films translated? And this was all being done through the Filmmakers of VRChat Discord, because we agreed that we wanted to do a lot of that stuff through that Discord. VRChat would promote that Discord. We'd operate everything through that, including the screenings and all the workshops and such. VRChat would handle obviously the judging, the public stuff, like posting on their Twitter and YouTube and whatnot. And so like it was just a lot of this, like just typical event coordination. And when the first workshop like began, after they announced this publicly, was when I did a lot of like what I usually do. So I like hosting events.
You contradicted yourself.
I like hosting workshops, not events. I don't like hosting events.
Okay,
I kind of do sometimes, but okay. Beside the point. I like hosting workshops because I like teaching people stuff, and so that was what I did a lot of in the early stages of the Film Jam. I teach this beginning like intro to VRChat film workshop where we kind of like go over how to like actually start out, and so that was really fun for me to do again. But a lot more of this time. And then other people also with the Filmmakers of VRChat group hosted some of their own workshops as well, just to help everyone get set up for the Film Jam. And then once people actually started the like Film Jam, it was kind of, we got to relax for a little bit, you know, because like they were doing their own thing. I was just gonna sit here and wait to see the submissions rolling in. By the way, I expected like 60 submissions. I was like, there's no way there's gonna be that many people doing this stuff. Like, it takes a lot of effort to actually make one of these things.
Yeah.
It was 160 before we disqualified 30 of them immediately for being like shit posts or just like wrong.
Right.
But it was like, it ended up being 130 something submissions, and that just completely blew us out of the window. We were just like, what in the world? Just a little note about that, but so I wasn't a judge. People commonly think that I was for this, but I didn't want to be a judge, and I didn't like there were a few of us that were a lot more close with the community because I do a lot of stuff with people. I didn't want like to do that because it'd be just too biased. And so the judging was done with a completely fair and unbiased group of 8 judges, and I will not name who they are because we kept them anonymous because, you know, people tend to get very angry if their film doesn't make it to the top 10.
Of course, yeah.
You know, and they go after the judges and all that sort of stuff. And then, so that, you know, that judging period happened, and once we selected the films, and I hosted the screenings. I like doing that sort of stuff. I do like my own screenings at the studio, so I know how to make that work out, and so, yeah. That was like basically my role. It was a lot of planning, and then like workshops and screenings. That was when I stepped in more.
Okay. So were like was your involvement with hosting the film jam, or not the film jam, I guess hosting the screening rather, like being one of the people who are talking, was that planned? Was that part of the plan? Was that something that you were down to do? And I guess how did you guys kind of sort that out and I guess put that together? Because like obviously it's one thing to plan the event, it's another thing to like plan the screening. So let's I guess we can talk. I guess we can maybe work backwards, perhaps, with like your involvement as like the host, and what was that like? One of the hosts for that.
Okay, yeah.
For the screening.
So okay, hosting the event. You're right. It's a little bit different. It was more just behind the scenes planning. Like we all did that. Like it was all kind of distributed work. And all of us were like in meetings talking about like what to do. And then a lot of it was hands off once the jam started and after we got the workshops done. But yeah, for the actual screenings themselves, I was like, yeah, I'll handle those because I do a lot of screening stuff. Been doing this for a very long time, like screening our own films and such. And I had like a mean and a method to doing this. On stage during the screenings, it was me and one of the VRChat employees, Elam. He's the video producer for VRChat, and we were on stage like kind of introducing stuff and talking about stuff, and we also closed off the screening of that. Like him and I have been really close for many years. I've known him since I've been at Metacosm. Like I remember when he actually got the job with VRChat too. That was such a yay moment for him. And so we were on stage together doing that kind of thing. But this time me representing one group, him representing VRChat. And so, yeah, that was, I've been doing this for a while, and so that's why I wanted to take care of the screenings, used to how this stuff goes. So I like public speaking a lot too. So it's pretty like natural to me.
Okay. Yeah. Makes sense. So, with regards to choosing the judges, was the filmmakers of VRChat involved at all with choosing the judges? Which I believe they're VRChat employees, basically, right? More or less, or?
I don't know.
Oh, you can't say. Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay.
We weren't really involved. We just basically were like, you know, we're gonna step aside because of unbiased. Let you guys take care of it.
Okay.
You know?
Gotcha.
Yeah. So VRChat handled the judging.
Okay.
Essentially.
Gotcha. All right. However it got done is however it got done. That works for me. Okay. Yeah. So, were there any challenges that you faced with organizing this particular event? Because you said it was being worked on for about a year. So, were there any challenges that came with all the preparation with everything?
Oh yeah, there's plenty. And a lot of this is because, like, it's a lot different when you're doing it externally. So this jam is public, meaning that anyone can participate.
Right.
And so there was a lot
and that's
of
a first,
stuff that
right?
we didn't know how to handle. Yeah, oh yeah, it's a first for VRChat
Right.
to do a film jam. They've done like a lot of world jams and stuff. It's a lot different though. And so there were plenty of challenges. The first one that we encountered was like during the planning of actually how this event would go. We usually have shorter jams. Like jams are not supposed to be like a month long. Jams are basically like
48 hours,
if you've
like
ever,
that.
Yeah, 48 hours, like 24 hours for some like hackathons.
Right.
Like a tech thing. That's a fairly common version of a jam. They're meant to be like you get stuff done as fast as you can to see how well you can do it in a short amount of time. It's a challenge, you know. And obviously because we're dealing with the public and a lot of people that maybe don't know how to do this stuff, we could not do that. Like 48 hours, no, that was never gonna work. And so we chose to go a month. And then, you know, that took a while of like thinking of how long this should be. The next challenge was, okay, how do we like get people to actually do this stuff? Because I've been trying to get people to make films for a long time, but you can lead a horse to water,
but you can't
always
make
get
him drink. Yeah.
Yep. And so the best way we went about this was the workshop stuff that I mentioned. Like we'll try our best to offer resources for people to learn how to do stuff. And it was also like some stuff like I was doing at the time that I thought would help, like promotion wise. I released my own film right before the film jam. It was Our Precious Autumn, and that was the most portfolio type film that I've made to this day. And I'll talk more about that later, but I was like, through that, like a lot of people gained an interest for this sort of thing. I had like screenings for that film, public and private ones, and a bunch of different types of screenings. And like every time people were like, oh, that's so cool, I really want to do that now. And so one of the methods I really want to see people do was if some of us would release films and like talk about our own, it gets people interested in making their own film. And so there were like that plus workshops was like, I was like, oh, I hope this helps, you know, like get people interested. And obviously that wasn't a concern, you know, because a lot of people were actually interested, but we didn't know at the time. That was like a concern of ours. And workshops themselves, you know, can be challenging. Planning what types and when, it was kind of difficult to figure out exactly how that would work. We were all really busy, you know. And I think, yeah, there was also, okay, this is a weird challenge that I never really talked about publicly too, that we had to deal with, subtitles and language barriers. This platform hosts a lot of people, a lot of different places, with a lot of different languages and cultures. And we were like, okay, what happens if someone submits a film fully in Japanese? You know, like, oh man, we can't fully judge those correctly on the judging scale, because if you can't understand the film, it's not going to work. And so what we had to do was, and I didn't really want to do this because I know it's difficult for some people to do this sort of work, but we required like hard burned in subtitles because we wanted to make sure that everyone could understand the films, like English subtitles. And so that was a difficult decision we had to make. Obviously some people were turned off by that, like some people just forgot the subtitles or they just didn't do them, and it kind of sucked. That was like what we had to require. So that was a really difficult thing that we had to figure out. That's why we built our translator team. We had like a bunch of people ready to translate. It turned out that most people actually already had internal translators and they didn't even need a lot of translation help, so that was good. But at the time we didn't know, we had to plan for stuff we didn't know. And yeah, a lot of the rest of the difficulty was just time, like planning times, dates, all that sort of stuff. Typical like event stuff, hence why I don't like doing events. But yeah, that's about it.
Okay. And like, who came up with the film jam idea? Was that something that VRChat approached you about, or was it something that VRChat approached maybe the filmmakers of VRChat about? Like, how did that? Well, I know you said how it came to be, but was it like a direct contact from VRChat reaching out? Was it like as simple as that, or something else?
Ooh, so this technically started like 2 years ago. We had a 48-hour film jam with the filmmakers of VRChat. And because I know Elam, and I was like, hey, you should keep an eye on this thing that we're doing, just in case VRChat has an interest in doing something similar, like wink wink, And so we basically had our film jam early, like 2 years ago, and we obviously Elam was like watching us with this one to see how it go. And then after we finished that, it went really well. People really loved it. The films were really fun, and people just enjoyed the heck out of it. VRChat eventually came back to us, and it was mostly like me and Elam kind of chit-chatting behind the scenes a little bit, like, so what's the deal with this, And we kind of worked it all together, and then officially started it, like I said, about a year ago. And so it's good to have people
Yeah.
as well. And also I think with VRChat specifically, they've kind of known about us for a little bit already, just because the film stuff is very favored, I would say, in their platform, as opposed to the other types of content you might find on YouTube.
Of course.
Oh.
Of course, yeah. Yeah.
So it's a lot easier to get it working, basically, because of that. Good relationships.
All right. Do you believe that VRChat's willingness to attempt to do the film jam was inspired by perhaps the latest new features that have been made available to VRChat players, such as the dolly system, such as the exposure setting on the camera? And I know you use VRC lens, so I'm not sure if like you're familiar with like the new developments with the VRC camera, but do you think that their interest in doing the film jam was inspired, or kind of like was like, well, we have this really cool feature, this really cool dolly feature, we should maybe do something cool to make people want to check it out and use it? Like, do you think that has anything to do with that, or was it just something that was just very purely you and your contact, talking about it, and then VRChat being like, let's just do the thing? Like, what do you think about that?
Yeah, so I wouldn't say it was because of the camera upgrades. The camera upgrades themselves were already, I think, in the works for a while. They were working on the camera stuff for quite a while, because like people they knew like the old camera was really bulky, and it didn't do what a lot of people wanted to do, content production, and so they were always wanting to work on it to improve it. The film jam stuff just happened, honestly, just happened to happen at the right time, because the dolly system was released that allowed people to do a lot more with the camera, the drone features and all sort of stuff. Like it worked out perfectly in terms of timing. I know who's been working on the camera with VRChat, and we would chat about like improvements to be made. Like we'd talk about like what maybe filmmakers want, and what other people kind of want for the camera. So they're very, let's say they're very like understanding of what we want with the camera. It's just like how it always is. You can't just implement something immediately. It takes time, research, and sometimes budgeting. May not allow for full working on a specific thing, and so like it takes a bit of time to implement features, but they've been in the works for a while. And I do know a lot about the VRChat camera because I used that for the workshops because I didn't want to go use like the VRC lens for these introduction workshops. 'Cause people don't have that immediately, but they do have the VRChat camera, and so I would use that as a teaching tool.
Okay. Nice. Why do you prefer VRC lens?
Ooh, it's a few different things. So the VRChat camera has most of the functionality that the VRC lens does. However, VRC lens is placed on your avatar as opposed to being an object, and so the ability to control the features is a lot different. VRC lens allows you to control everything using the radial like menu on your avatar, and so like things like manual focus, where I want to shift the focus using like a radial is so much easier than clicking on a camera using a slider, and so that's like thing number one. It's way easier to use for like my purposes. And the VRC lens also has a lot more customability. Like the VRC lens that we use at the studio is modified. It's a lot different than the VRC lens that's like default. We have a lot more like control with it. We also have like settings that you can choose that improves the video quality of the picture. And a couple like little small things too, like VRC lens allows you to remove post-processing of a world. And you'd be like, well, why would you ever want to do that?
Yeah.
It's because when you edit film, you typically want things to be more neutral. You don't want to have like an already edited footage presented to you, because oftentimes things like contrast is too much, and post-processing and worlds will do that, And so I like to remove the post-processing because it allows me more editing control. That's one thing. And VRC lens also has a different method of focus. I don't know if you've ever noticed this, but if you take a picture sometimes of your avatar using the VRChat camera and you have like the focus on, it causes like a haloing effect depending on the focus amount and the world that you're in. And it looks a little rough at times, and that's not what we want for film. That doesn't happen with VRC lens. It operates a little differently, and so it'll look a little bit more. It'll look a little bit better for us. But like I said, that's like, we're really picky about that stuff. But if you don't really care, you just want to make a film, VRChat camera is good to go. You got a lot of stuff to use on there. It's basically the same. We're just nitpicky about certain things.
Okay, I think it's good to be nitpicky, and it's good to have standards, because I think it's those standards that will hopefully push the technology further and perhaps lead to more innovation. So I think it's good to have a desire to really, have something that works really, really well, and perhaps that can one day be something that's implemented in the VRC camera. So, well, who knows? But my next question for you is, how did you, well, not you, but how did the team behind organizing the Film Jam come up with the 3 topics of the Film Jam? How did that come to be, and how did you settle on those 3 topics?
Oh, okay. So certain people came up with certain specific ones. I don't remember who exactly came up with what, but like our intention with those is typically for film jams or just like hackathons or jams in general, you have like a topic, of something you want to do. It allows us to make sure that you actually made the film for the jam, as opposed to just doing something a long time ago and just posting again without us knowing,
Right.
And so we had to come up with themes. And with the themes, we wanted them to be broad, but not like too broad, where you're just like, how do you know if that's even the theme they went with? And then we also wanted the themes to be specific enough so that we could identify them. And so a lot of us just came up with random ones. We just started narrowing them down. Like some of the VRChat people we were working with came up with some. like Ariel and Gab, the other co-hosts, came up with a bunch of them. I'm not very, let's say, creative with coming up with themes, and so I just helped narrow things down. But everyone pitched in. Like, we all just came up with a bunch of stuff, basically, and started chipping away. Like, this one, too difficult. This one, too specific. You know, that sort of thing.
Okay.
And so, yeah.
Yeah. I will say that the themes in mind were the reason why I didn't submit anything, because I was like, hell yeah, I want to submit something for this, and about like I have like a bunch of stuff like just waiting to be produced and waiting to be like edited together, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'll just work something from there, and then I saw the themes, I'm like, you can't really do that, none of those really fit, so yeah, I didn't really submit anything this time around, but yeah, like, but speaking of submissions, like, I know you all got like, you got like 130 or so in total after removal of others. Like, what were the judging? What were the standards that the videos were judged upon? If you can talk about that.
Ooh, I can actually, because we did talk about this publicly. So we followed very typical like judging criteria that we would for film festivals in real life. Obviously we did simplify them a little bit because the judges were not all film people. Like, there were a couple that like kind of were in the film industry or knew about film stuff, but the majority weren't. And so we wanted to make sure that they were like understandable and rateable. And so we narrowed it down to a few different things, like originality, sound design, like creativity. I might be slightly wrong about those because they were very specifically listed. I just don't have the sheet pulled up right now. But they were like if you look up a film festival judging criteria sheet, it'll be like basically the same. And once we chose those criteria, each judge would be they would have to rate every film in accordance to those criteria, and it was done in an Excel spreadsheet so they could like rate their score and eventually like the average for each film and so on and so forth, and it was used to determine what the top 20 films were, and then from the top 20 they would then all meet together as judges and then narrow down what the top 10 should be. So there was it was an objective like judging process, and then once everything was kind of narrowed down, then they would have to communicate with each other to select. And this is exactly how film festivals do it in real life. Maybe with a lot more interaction because, you know, they're paid to do that sort of thing. But it's a very similar process.
Okay. And can you talk about, like, were you well, okay, I know you weren't one of the judges, so you didn't watch like all the videos. You only saw like the top 10, right?
I watched most of them.
You did? Really? Okay.
Yeah, I watched most of them.
Yeah. What do you like? Obviously, I mean, we can't talk about specific ones. Obviously, that's not what I'm asking. But like, what was your like take on, you know, after doing the workshops and, you know, trying to get people and help people like get into the filming and how to go about it? Were you pleased with the submissions that were put in? Did you see perhaps, you know, glimpses of your own skill set, like back when you first started and how you've evolved? Like, were you seeing like glimpses of that in other people's work? Like, what kind of were your overall thoughts about the submissions that you saw? Not so much the top 10, because I do want to talk about those specifically, but but more so like the overall submissions that were brought in, since there were so many.
Yes to all the questions you just asked. So I was blown away by all these submissions because like I said, we've done this stuff before, like Film Jam, and like other people like would submit stuff to us, like to the group to just review and for us to watch, like outside the Film Jam. But I had never expected so many people to actually produce like quality work. Like, it wasn't just like shit posts. Like, I was afraid of that. Like, I was afraid people would just like make like funny shit posts and send them to us, and that'd be the majority of the submissions. No, they were actually like really serious like stuff. Like, they took that stuff seriously. That's what really like surprised me, because I was really happy with that. The quality of the films were really good as well, especially for a lot of people that I had never met before. I had no idea they existed, but then they released this thing that was like well done. I was like, okay, you know what you're doing. That's awesome, you know. And I did see like glimpses of like my earlier stuff too in a lot of these films. Like even some of the films had similar like shots that I've done in like my first film, you know, and it reminded me a lot of like what I used to do. And yeah, so overall it was really awesome. People knew what they were doing, and a lot of new people showed up that I'd never met before, like I said. So I made some new friends that way too. And it was overwhelmingly positive, like the whole experience. I was really happy with the films.
Oh yeah. So with regard to the top 10 that were chosen, and what do you think set them apart from all the other submissions that you had viewed, comparatively speaking? Like as someone who's very familiar with making films in VR, from your perspective, what do you think set them apart? Even though you weren't involved in judging in the process, but I'm sure that perhaps there was something you could glean from the choices that were made. So what were your thoughts?
Yep. So okay, the first thing that stood out to me was the top 10 selection was actually really diverse. It wasn't just like one type of film, and it wasn't like one genre either. There was a lot of different types of things, like very creative like choices for the plots. So that was like the first thing that I was like, okay, that's good. I'm happy with that. Like sometimes what happens, you get like a lot of people doing the same thing. Like for our film jam that we did, the 48-hour one, that had like a lot of comedy, you know? Like I was actually participating for that one, and my team's film was not fully comedy. It was very emotional. But like the majority of them were comedic. And so I was like, okay, I bet you that's what's gonna happen here. Gonna be a lot of comedic stuff because that's what people are used to. No, that wasn't the case. It was very diverse. A lot of depressing stuff, a lot of really happy stuff, some comedy, some really emotional, some very unique. And I'll get to that in a sec. But so that's what stood out to me. And in terms of like what set these films out, I think there's a lot of factors. Some films had like strengths that they excelled in that stood out from the others. Like there was a film that had a lot of fight choreography, and it was really well done. Like the cinematography was really good. The way they did the choreography was well planned and well done. It looked really visually gorgeous. Great voice acting. Like that one stood out because of the choreography, and everyone knew that. You know, there was a really like emotional film as well, about someone who like lost a family member. And that one stood out because it was visually very gorgeous, and it was a very touching like subject, you know, which is a lot different than the fight choreography one. There was a film that utilized a lot of music, and maybe some people didn't know this, but the music that was used in that film was all custom made for the film jam. They made all like custom songs.
That's impressive.
And custom worlds, custom avatars, all that sort of stuff. That stood out because of the music, you know? And there was a comedic one that that someone made that was very it was like a murder mystery type thing, and that stood out because of comedy. So it's like a lot of these films like excelled in a very specific thing that they like kind of wrote on, you know, for the film. And that's what helped them stand out, was they had a certain unique quality to them.
Okay. And well, my next question is, what do you like? I guess what are your thoughts about the film jam? Do you? It seems like it went off pretty well. Like the having two showings for Western audiences and for the East Asian area of the world. Like having two screenings seems to have gone really well. I literally just happened upon the East Asian screening at like 6 a.m. I just happened to be there. So that was really cool to see. I didn't see all of them, but I saw maybe half of them. I was there for maybe like half of them. So like, what are your thoughts about like the overall film jam as a whole? Yeah,
I thought it went a lot better than I could have ever expected, especially for a first. You know, first is usually the worst, right? You have some weird thing that goes wrong at some point. But no, it ran a lot smoother than I was expecting. Submissions were really great. Like I said, I was happy with the amount and the quality of them. It got a lot of people interested in the film stuff. It's helped like the community grow quite a bit. I think I would assume VRChat's pretty happy with this as well. It helps them as a platform because it shows that like not all content has to be super negative. And honestly, just overall, it was good ending. I'm really happy with it. I think we're gonna try to do this again next year. Obviously, I can't promise anything. It depends on VRChat as well. But I would venture to say that everyone was happy in the end, myself included.
Nice, nice. And would you do anything differently with regards to the next film jam, hypothetically speaking? Would you want to do anything differently than you did for this particular one? Did you have any lessons that you learned from this particular go-round?
Oh yeah. No, there's quite a few lessons learned. So I think a couple of them that I can just remember off the top of my head was we need to do more workshops. They need to be more like better spaced in times. That's one thing. The actual runtime of the event was fine. Like the length of the film jam itself was fine. I think I want to do a better job of like advertising it, marketing this. We didn't do that much. That's a huge lesson learned. From VRChat's marketing's perspective, I think what we're gonna try to do is appeal to more like demographics. We really only reached the Western audience with this one. There were a couple of like Asian submissions and some from Europe. The majority of them were, well, Europe is Western, but there was a lot less like Asian submissions than I would have expected. There's a huge film scene in Japan, but I don't think we hit them for this one. So that's something I'm gonna try to work on next year if we do this again. And then for the screening events, I think I just want to do more of them. We could probably do better with just like 3 screening events instead of just the 2 public ones. Because like if you if you just were busy that day, you're kind of screwed. Like you don't have a chance to make it to one of these. So we're probably gonna do something a little different with that. Aside from that, no, everything else was pretty good. Yeah, I don't think I have any other lessons learned I can think of right now.
All right. Well, I think it's time to get into Studio Penrose, and all that encompasses, that studio. So I do believe that the studio was formed in 2023, if I'm correct about that, and Studio Penrose is like, that's a name that I'm pretty sure fairly early on I had a pulse on pretty soon, like pretty soon after its inception. So what was it like? You are the studio lead of Studio Penrose. So I guess we'll start with, how did putting this studio together happen? Like, what went into that, and what's that? How does that work, and how did that happen essentially?
Yeah, so okay, we were formed August 28th, 2023. I remember that date. It's our anniversary. And basically, the cogs weren't clicking with the previous studio, and so I was like, okay, it's time for me to go my separate ways. So that's basically why Studio Penrose was formed. And a lot of us, like the people that I work with right now at the studio, we have all been working together at the previous studio, and so we just kind of went on to do our stuff at Penrose. We were all like a really close-knit team back there, and so when I made the new studio, we all kind of followed suit. There were some growing pains, obviously, but that was why the studio was formed. Let's just say it's very nerve-wracking, like making a community from scratch. I have this insecurity where it's like I'm afraid to leave because of like the fear of the unknown. Like I value stability, That's I mentioned like that earlier on with my job. Like I prefer having a job that's more stable than working for Hollywood. Some people prefer, stuff like that, but it's not for me. And so when I was first like deciding whether or not I want to like leave, I didn't know if it would be good. I mean, like, you're starting a channel from scratch. You know, the previous group that we had a subscriber count of like 32,000 subscribers, which, you know, obviously in the grand scheme of YouTube isn't terribly much, but it's a huge stepping point. Like 32K is pretty good.
Yeah.
You know, and so I was afraid that if I left, I would just go into obscurity, like nowhere. You know, disappear. And I was also afraid that I'd like make a huge divide in friend groups. You know, like how do I like tell people, or not tell people, like ask people, hey, do you want to help me over here? You know, sort of thing. And so it was a pretty nerve-wracking time, like a stressful time to like leave and make a new studio. But I think, well, not I think, it definitely ended up well. A lot of the stuff that has happened wouldn't have been possible if I, you know, didn't make a new studio. That includes like our films, but it also includes some of these like events that we've been doing, like, and the people that we've met along the way, you know.
So like, I think a lot of people have heard of perhaps like game studios, people in game studios, like someone in the studio being like, you know what, I don't really want to be here anymore. Like, for example, I think the most classic example that has become pretty well known in the gaming sphere is the guy who formed Sandfall Interactive, who created Expedition 33. He used to work for Ubisoft. And he was just like, yeah, this isn't working for me. So he basically like formed his own team. So like, and just went off and did that and made a phenomenal game. First game is incredible. So like would you describe that experience of bringing people on and having, you know, I guess I wouldn't say recruiting, but I guess convincing them to take a risk on you? Like how was that? What was that like for you?
Yeah. I think it was a little different because we were all friends, and so to get everyone to work on this like new studio, like similar projects, wasn't like that difficult. But it is that difficult when we're like trying to meet new people as a studio, you know, because like we obviously are newly formed, and so we didn't have a lot under our belt, and so networking was difficult in that sense. Starting from 500 subscribers on my previously existing channel, rebranding it, you know, to Studio Penrose, and like, you know, starting from scratch, it's hard to like fully like meet people, and work with people and get people to join on board. I got slightly lucky because one of my main things I liked to do was to make sure to like meet people and make friends. That was like the main reason why I joined VRChat, and it was also, you know, I kept that going even throughout all this stuff. So I'd always like make connections and make friends. And so because I like kind of did a lot of community work, it definitely helped us as a group. You know, so we had some credibility even with a small like subscriber count and very little like views, you know, on the channel. So yeah.
How did you come up with the name Penrose?
Ooh, so we made a film. It was called The Penrose Protocol. Basically, it was about a like an undercover Penrose agent. Penrose is like a intelligence agency, and they were basically chasing after a criminal. And this task, or this mission was called the Penrose Protocol. It's like in the lore of the world that we made, it's basically your initiation to the group. You have to do a mission for them, and it's called that protocol. And so that film was made before Penrose was formed, and we just really like the name. You know, like the idea of like the Penrose. If you know what a Penrose is, it's like we were referencing like the Penrose triangle. It's like a triangle that looks like it shouldn't like connect. I don't know how to describe it. That was like the butchered way of describing what a Penrose triangle is, but if you look it up, you know what it is. You've probably seen it before. And that's where that name came from, was that film. Because that film also started a lot of lore for our universe. Me and a few others wrote a lot of lore because of that project. And it carried on to the very next projects that we were working on, and so we kept the name for the studio.
Gotcha. It's interesting to know that it was the so basically you made a film without naming yourself first. So the film came before the name.
Yeah, sorry to clarify, we made that film with Metacosm.
Oh right, that is right. Yeah, okay, that's true. Yeah.
So that was why that already existed.
Okay.
But we just took the name with us, and also the film.
I mean, of course, yeah. That's fair. Okay, cool. So, like, how many people are in the studio, and how like I know you say you're all friends, so like how do I guess projects get off the ground with however many people are in there?
Yeah. So I'm definitely looking at my Discord for this because I don't know exact numbers very well, but our staff team consists of like 10 people, maybe a little bit more. Our production team is about the same, possibly a little more. Staff team handles like all the internal stuff. Production team is like world creators, avatar creators, like all like that stuff, production related things. And obviously some staff members are also production people. And so we have like in terms of like an internal like behind the scenes production team, we have like about 25 people total. And but we do have a lot of friends, you know, like people that do certain things, like music production as an example. We have a lot of musicians that we work with, and even some within the studio. And we have a lot of avatar people that we know, and so on and so forth. And so we have a lot of help, which I'm really happy and grateful of everyone that like works with us and is also on the staff team and production team. It would not be possible without this many people for what we do. And so that's like our behind the scenes team. We also have multiple directors, and they're all working on their own projects right now, which is why you may not have seen their productions yet, but we have quite a few. And so in terms of getting a project off the ground, we do have like a whole process for it. We have like a just a guideline for how we do this. Basically, director would have to pitch an idea. We kind of conceptualize and say, is this like something we can do and handle right now? And then if that's okay, then we go to the script and write the whole script, then we approve it again. Once that script is approved, then we production greenlight. So they get all the assets and stuff organized, voice actors and all that sort of stuff going. And so basically what I'm saying is in terms of our like film production, like I guess films getting off the ground, you usually have to have like done stuff in the studio. You usually have to be a staff member. I say usually because it's, you know, you never know how it might turn out. Sometimes it might be an exception. And then it has to follow like a normal like production cycle that you would for like a film.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah, I can imagine it could be that seems like a lot of time, a lot of commitment to work and to do all that. Like, what is, if for someone, for example, if someone wanted to create their own studio, and you know, someone who's created, you know, Studio Penrose, what would you say would be the important things to keep in mind when forming a studio?
There's a bunch of those. So how it usually starts, and basically similarly to how we started, is it's just a group of friends doing things. And I think like that's a really great way to start because everyone's kind of on the same page. We all know each other, sort of thing, and it's a lot, you know, easier. But in terms of like running a studio, once you actually like start it, there's a lot of things to keep in mind. The biggest one I give newbies like advice for is to not burn the fuck out, in layman's terms, because like everything kind of depends on like everyone's well-being. If you don't have body actors that are like, you know, capable of doing things, then you really can't film much, you know. If the director burns out, gets too tired and doesn't want to do it anymore, then the whole project fails. And so I try to remind people that we're all doing this volunteer, or most of us are. And so like you gotta be aware of that. I do this stuff for fun, and I tell that to everyone, including, like, everyone knows that in the studio as well. Like, this is my hobby, and so I don't expect everyone to be like, you have to be here all the time, you have to keep up to date with all, no, that stuff, no. You know? And in a similar fashion, I always make sure that body actors are not being, like, overworked and burnt out, that avatar creators are not just, like, dragged on and, like, just, like, tired. Because this stuff is very, let's say, tiring. It's easy to burn out. Like a lot of creative work is, you know, music, drawing, like art, all that stuff's very easy to burn out. And so, slow and steady will win the race. That's what I tell people. Make good friends and make sure you take care of them if you're a studio lead. You know, make sure to talk to people, make sure to market your stuff once you're done with it. Be public, you know, talk about your work, you know, talk to us, that sort of thing. Make new friends. So that's all important to developing a studio, to have it grow.
Okay. What is a studio lead, and what does that entail?
Yeah, it definitely depends, I think, on the studio and like how it's formed, or how it's like set up. But for me here, like, I'm also a director, so I also like do my own films and such. But in terms of like the pure role of a studio lead, I kind of monitor like the direction of the studio. I lead like I just said direction, the events of the studio, like what projects should be done and improved, how our channels formatted, like what we do, like what we should focus on. I also manage things like community networking, like events, podcasts, and stuff like that. I handle like the operations of the overall studio, but on top of that I also do my directing stuff, and so that's basically it. Yeah.
Okay. So, Studio Penrose has you all have done a number of films, and we'll definitely talk about them individually. I do want to kind of talk about them for as long as it's necessary. But I do want to kind of continue with the overarching kind of like this like story of Studio Penrose and everything that kind of like encompasses it, because it's not just, you know, one film. It's there's people behind it. There's a story behind that too. And speaking of stories, I know that that you all have a manga that is involved in like the lore of the movies that you all are doing. So there's so I'm kind of curious as to how did that come about, and what does that manga really kind of do in terms of maintaining the storytelling continuity of the projects that you all are working on?
Yeah. Okay, I know what you're talking about. It's that single manga page that we like dropped for the film Emergence. That actually kind of helps tie in with the studio's like where it came from. But so I wish we had a full like manga series.
Oh, okay.
So
I thought you were like working on the behind the scenes.
No,
Okay.
Man, you know how much money that costs?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. I'm like,
to make a single
damn.
manga page is like $200 minimum. Yeah, no, in a perfect world that would be what we would actually have, because like it's really good to actually have like a web series, like comic series, to release with the films. It helps like the development of the film. But so that manga panel was for the film Emergence, and like I brought up the idea that when we released the film The Penrose Protocol, which came before Emergence, we were like developing a whole lore. And that's what that manga page is. It was like a lore for that character that is seen in the film Emergence. And so it all ties in with the lore that we're writing behind the scenes. We have, like, what we actually do is we have a Miro board. Miro is like a website that you put like sticky notes basically around and like organize them. And we do our like writing on that, like our like lore writing for like our universe, I mean. And so Emergence was the first film that Studio Penrose actually released, and that's what that manga was tied to. And Emergence it started its life actually in development stage at Metacosm, but I took it out of Metacosm because it was about to get redlit. I don't usually tell people that, but I'll tell it here, because it's kind of it's been long enough, I think, and it's kind of important in the lore of things. Emergence was, let's say, it was not liked by the previous studio to be released on the channel without major modification. And what we were planning for was we wanted to release that at Raindance Immersive Film Festival. That year, 2023, was the first year that Raindance Immersive had a VRChat film category. It was the first.
Right.
Just like the Film Jam was the first for this year.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were valuing it because it was like, okay, that's really cool. We should do this. We have the resources, we have the time, we have the people, we got like the lore written already. Let's fire on this, you know. And so that was the intention. But the higher ups at Metacosm didn't see it the same way, and they were just like, hey, you know, I'm be real. We don't want to release that on our channel at this current stage, and we definitely don't want to release it with Raindance. And so just if you really want to do it, just do it on your own. And I was like, okay, cool, I'll do it on my own.
Yeah.
And so we did it on our own, and we took it to Raindance, and it won the Best Short Film Award,
Wow.
which was kind of wild. We got like a physical trophy too. It's sitting on my desk here for that.
Wow.
And it was a huge motivation for the studio. Like I mentioned, like it's very difficult to start out fresh, and for a lot of us, it was like stressful, you know, like the separation of the two groups. And so it was a time period of a lot of like stress and anxiety, and being part of that festival, seeing all the people that were also really creative, meeting a lot of new people, and obviously submitting the film to the festival, and winning that award really kind of like motivated us to like, this is the right direction, because this project was going to get axed. There was an alternative timeline where if I just didn't leave, it would have just never made it, and just none of this would have ever happened, you know. And so I view that film, with all of its flaws, there's a lot of them, don't worry, there's a lot of flaws and I know it, at a really warm place in my heart. And that's kind of what I vision as like the actual, like the moment the studio actually, the cogs started to turn. And then from that point on, we really started like doing stuff, you know?
Yeah. All right. So we were talking a little bit about the manga page and like the continuity that exists in the universe that you all are creating. So I suppose we could talk about a little bit regarding that with New Millennia. What was the concept behind that, and where did that idea spring from?
Yes, that started with the Penrose Protocol. That film is the first one that took place in New Millennia. New Millennia is basically a variation of today's New York City, combined with a lot of different factors. In our universe, the United States isn't the United States. We call it Usonia, which we haven't really released that yet, but that's what it actually is. I'll get more into it if you want, but we're working on a series that is our bread and butter with the studio, and that's gonna fully explain everything that I'm gonna mention.
Okay. Wonderful. Look forward to it.
Yeah. So the city of New Millennia is basically New York City, Gotham City type thing.
Okay.
Slightly modernized version of our current universe, but not like cyberpunk level. You know, like there's advanced technology, but it's still like it's not that far ahead. And in this universe, we have, let's say, like obviously class differences within the city, and there's a lot of different factions at play. Penrose Intelligence is our version of the FBI combined with CIA. There's also a lot of like other sort of like vigilante groups, and also like social justice groups in the city. There's different variations of like humanoids in there, so like it's not all just like normal humans. There's like variations of different types of peoples. Hence why you see some characters with like ears and tails. Don't worry, we'll expand on that when we actually get to this series. But there's also a lot of inspiration for this universe. If you've ever seen the anime Psycho-Pass.
Oh yeah.
Cyberpunk a little bit.
Yeah, I love
Psycho-Pass is a
Psycho-Pass.
huge one.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's
Big
one of
fan.
my favorites.
Yeah,
Yep,
same.
That's a huge one. Yep. And then also there's this like Netflix show that released like within the last few years, and no one really knows about it. There's like some production qualities that I don't really like about it, but it's really fun. It's called like Captain Laserhawk or something. It was about the man, I don't Ubisoft. That's their IP.
Oh, okay.
And basically in that universe, there's a lot of like different types of like humanoid-esque creatures and also some like furry type creatures as well. Like it's not just only humans, you know, and that's kind of what we were modeling our thing similarly, because like VRChat also has all this like different like stuff. So it's just a really fun world, and we really haven't gotten a chance to fully show it off yet. We're waiting for it. Don't worry, it'll be really fun.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sure you guys have been cooking. I'm sure that it seems like just based off the Penrose protocol, like I can definitely tell there's a lot more to this, and obviously not so obvious, but I have watched the other films as well, so you know we'll talk about that in a little bit. But I do want to ask about like there is a substantial amount of resources and assets, and I know that you said you have a production team that has a lot to do with that, and essentially bringing these stories to life are essentially done with original world design. I'm not sure how far that goes, but I'd love to like hear more about like world design, and maybe like as a director, like how do you kind of figure out what you want and need in the span, like a space of a world, to let it be and exist the way it's supposed to, with like I would imagine the complete freedom to do whatever you want with it with the team that you have. So can you tell us a little bit about like world design with Studio Penrose?
Yeah, okay, there's a lot of factors in this one. So it depends on the production, like what's needed and what's required, keyword required. And then it also depends on like the plot of the film and like kind of what would make the most sense and what the goal of the project is. So as an example, the first film that we made, Voicemail, as like a team, that film didn't use any custom worlds because we were really writing the plot around Organism, the world of VRChat.
Yeah, Dr. Morrow.
So yeah, Dr. Morrow's worlds are really cool for abstract design. And that's what we were kind of like, okay, we're just gonna go off that. But some films require custom worlds, unless we don't otherwise we couldn't do them. So for the Penrose series and also Penrose Protocol, there were a couple of custom worlds made, and those were made because of the scenes themselves. Like, and in the Penrose Protocol, there's a shootout sequence. The whole world was designed because we needed a certain world to be a certain way. We needed to have like medical equipment. We needed it to be able to turn the lights on and off. We needed the hallways to extend a certain way. And so, you know, it required that to make that scene possible, so we had to make that world. A lot of the other worlds were not custom made because we didn't need to custom make them. But for like our future projects and for our series that we're working on, like that's going to be a lot of custom worlds because we're actually expanding our universe. We need to put our actual design into the universe to make it like ours. So like for instance, the skyline is going to be designed to look a certain way. Certain buildings are going to be made to look a certain way. The placement of the street system, railroad system, like all that sort of stuff is going to need to be like custom made because it makes sense in the context of the series. And so like it depends on the project and the theme of the project. But the project I used to describe custom worlds the most is the one we just released, Our Precious Autumn. So that film follows a like burnt out manga artist, and obviously because she's a manga artist, she has to have all of her like manga everywhere, and so all those worlds had to be made custom to allow for custom like artwork, like placement, lighting design. We wanted all that to be done a certain way, and so primarily we had three world designers that I adore a lot and we've been working with since the beginning. Kadeko, you know Kadeko probably because of their pool rooms world, the backrooms world. That's like really popular all the time.
Yeah, I've seen them around. Yeah, their name is familiar.
Cool.
I don't know them personally, but I do know their name for sure.
Yeah, they're really awesome and really talented. And there's Peach Bite, who we've worked with since the beginning as well, and she does a lot of custom worlds for us. Very technologically and world savvy. Also Avatar savvy. They're just really smart with all this like tech stuff. And then Lucy Liu, who people might know because they made the VFI world,
Mm-hmm.
which we
Yeah.
And so we had a pretty stacked cast here to make the worlds for Autumn, and it turned out really visually, like I loved them. Like the worlds are really gorgeous. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. And like, how do you determine what is necessary? Are there storyboards? Are there like, obviously there's a script, but like how do you determine like what goes into like world design? So there's that, you know, things that you don't need, or there's like bloat or whatever. Like what goes into that?
Yeah, sorry, I should have probably answered that with the previous one. So it depends on like if the film would really benefit from it. So like I said, Autumn needed those like manga drawings to be in there. Otherwise it feel kind of lifeless actually if there weren't like manga books and like art all over the place. And then like a lot of that's determined through the script. It's actually not entirely always through storyboard because we will make do with what we have typically, like existing. But the script will determine whether or not like something's 100% needed. Like let's say we want to have a fight sequence occur on a train station platform. There's a lot of worlds that have that, and we'll find one that works, you know. But let's say that we want to have something take place in New Millennia and it needs to have like a logo. You know, like a building has to be there that like lists something, like maybe it's a headquarters of a company. Then we need to make that world because we wouldn't be able to find something with like our own, you know, how it usually goes. And so we kind of like in the pre-production stage when we're writing, I work with the directors and my team to figure out like what's needed, like what has to make it has to be there, otherwise the project kind of like lessens in quality. But we like to be conservative with our resources because like it's a lot of work.
Right.
And, like if we don't need a world 100%, we won't do it. You know, we'll find something to make it work.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, you know, to kind of piggyback on world design, like what do you all what goes into avatar design, avatar prep, characters that you use specifically for your stories? Can you tell us a bit about that?
Ooh. Yeah, okay, I have a personal thing about like avatar design. So all of our avatars are booth avatars usually in our films. Not always, but like 90% of the time. At least the main characters are 100% usually booth avatars because we like to keep our designs very like consistent. Like a lot of obviously this might vary by director, but how I usually do it is I have no outlines on the avatars. I have makeup on all avatars so that the lips are very like visible but not like too visible. Makeup on the nose and such so it brings it out a little bit more, and same with the eyes. Like I know this is my personal avatar, but I made it the way that I would with like a film avatar, the same sort of design. And like we do things very consistently, so like no like crazy fizzbone type stuff with the hair. It doesn't make it like, you know, like we don't have like our film character avatars like personals usually, and so they're designed for the project.
Right.
And so like you typically would see very normal streetwear, not like let's say VRChat fashion in our films. Just because like we want to make sure everything kind of fits together typically.
Okay. By the way, I wanted to ask, are these worlds that you all have created, are they available in VRChat to go to?
Oh my god, okay. I want to release them, but so okay, you know how this usually kind of is. Our world app creators, they made them for the films and quickly, and so they're not like 100% meant to be VRChat chill worlds, like, if that makes sense.
Of course.
They don't like have UIs designed a certain way. Maybe like the worlds just kind of disappear into the abyss around certain corners, or like there's like some funkiness, but they're made for film, or like as film sets. And so some of my world creators are like, look, we can release it, but I just want to finish it. I just want to like make this thing look good, you know, because it's my thing, like my work, and I want to make sure it visually looks good for the public, you know. And so that's why they're not released yet. But like I'll try to bother them because I do want to release these worlds so people can like go to them normally and just hang out, you know. Like the train station world is the one that people talk about in Autumn all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It has like a fully functioning moving train system. It's visually built to look like a city scene. Like people would really enjoy like taking photos or like, you know, filming in it and stuff. And they've been asking, can that be released? And I'm like, I can, but I need to bother Peach about it. She made the world. So give it some time.
Okay.
Basically.
All right. Cool.
They'll all be released eventually.
Nice. It would be like, you know, in anime, people go to the places that exist in anime that are inspired from real life places. It'll be that kind of thing. Just the VR idea of it. Like, oh, I saw this in a movie and the short film, so I'm gonna go there and see what it's like, you know, firsthand, type deal. So yeah, that'd be kind of cool. So I do want to ask about like the challenges that you face with VRChat, because you've been making films in VR, specifically in VRChat, for a number of years now, and I'm very curious to know what are some of the challenges that maybe previously existed back when VRChat was younger, I suppose you could say, and if anything has really changed in terms of like your ability to do certain things or achieve certain effects in the VR space because of, you know, innovations and progressive changes that VRChat has made over the years.
So I'd say that most of the challenges we still face are still here.
From like way back?
Because this platform, from way back.
Okay.
This platform's not meant to be for film. You know, it's obviously not like made for filmmaking. And so there's a lot of things that we have to still deal with. And there are a couple things that have improved though, just because of technological advances, not necessarily because of VRChat the platform. You know, obviously the camera's improved, but we never really used the VRChat default camera anyways. And so like that doesn't really count in this conversation, but difficulties. So obviously clipping, always been a problem, never gonna go away probably. You know, clipping of like, you know, clothes and hair. Like if I were to try to like high five you, it'd go right through your hand, like all that sort of stuff. Yeah. Yep, like that's all still there, and it's like I don't see that disappearing anytime soon. It would take a lot of work to make that disappear, and like in terms of the context of this platform, it's like it's not worth that much amount like money to fix that, right? I know it helps like the immersion, right? But like, you know, it really is only a big problem for filmmakers. That's like the biggest limitation that I personally don't like the most, is like the clipping and inability to actually fully interact with another avatar. People have come up with some solutions, but it's not like perfect yet, you know? So choreography is gonna always be difficult because of this. There's latency problems as well. That's not VRChat's fault. It's just literally how it is online. Like people lag a little bit more than others and such of that sort. Like in terms of like actual like progression of things getting better, like I'm just talking like purely VRChat the platform.
Right.
I would say that like the lighting stuff and like the tracking IK has gotten better. So like that stuff that I think has improved. The lighting stuff's a lot to do with like people themselves like creating things. So like, you know, light volumes is a new and hot thing, right? And that's really helped us. Visually looks really gorgeous. And like a lot of new avatar designs actually. Avatar design has progressed a lot, shader design as well, and it looks visually way better for film. Granted, that's not VRChat thing, but it's a community thing. And so I'm gonna say that the community's been advancing a lot of stuff that's really helped us. Oh, and Fizzbones were a really cool thing to help filmmaking as well. Fizzbones look a lot better than dynamic bones back then.
All right.
So, yeah, that's about it.
Okay. All right. Nice. All right. So, can you tell us about some of the very I'd say the most common issues that come with filming in VRChat, like camera, like logistics? You mentioned, you know, lag and latency. Can you go into more detail about like what makes filming in VRChat difficult? Obviously, I think we all know like why it's fulfilling. We don't really have to talk about that. But like, in what way is it like what does a person have to think about with regards to filming in VRChat specifically in this context?
Yeah, definitely latency, and definitely clipping. Obviously, those are very common things, though. We already talked about that. That's like the biggest thing I would say separates like quality of film, is like that sort of thing, like how much a character like clips through everything and like how much they sync everything together. But in terms of like filmmaking in VRChat specifically, avatar design and expression is what I look for in a film. So like for me, we were talking about the Film Jam stuff, and like it's like avatar design and stuff, I look at it, but like not too many people put like intricacies into it because it takes a lot of time to do that. And so like I think controlling expressions and designing those are something that might be really difficult for people to do, but is like really important in what we do. I know that's not 100% like just VRChat platform related, but it is like something that we have to look for and deal with when we're working in this platform. You know, face tracking exists. I can get more into that if you want, but it's like a whole tangent about how, like, in my opinion, face tracking is not there for our purpose yet. It can't capture every subtle movement, and oftentimes it over exaggerates expressions a lot, depending on the avatar design and how you like have face tracking built into that avatar. But the rest of the difficulty for filmmaking VR comes from the camera. There's a lot of stuff you have to deal with. Lag is the biggest one, because like you have to have a hefty computer to do a lot of like crazy stuff. And even so, like sometimes you have to push it depending on how many avatars you have shown on screen. And like camera work can be very difficult as well. You know, in real life you get to hold a physical camera. It's not like that here necessarily, which does help us in some ways, but limits us in others. And so the rest of it comes within like camera operation is difficult.
Can you talk a little bit about like what goes into that? Like I guess techniques that you use to kind of circumvent these challenges?
Yeah. So I use VRC lens, and that works almost identical to what's called a DSLR camera in real life. DSLR camera is like your typical picture camera, and it has like similar controls. We are able to control focus with it. We're able to control like exposure. We're also able to control like stability, motion, like a lot of that sort of stuff with the VRC lens. And so it takes a little bit of a learning curve to learn how to operate that. In terms of like what I do and what I look for in like operating this thing is like I actually do like run around a lot when I'm like filming. I don't just sit in my chair. I usually like I'm doing like certain things like posing or like moving and showing my body actors what to do. And like with the camera's operations, you have to use a lot of like radial menus. I always use manual focus, which requires me to use a radial menu constantly, and I always have to look on the screen to make sure everything's in focus. There's like red lines that show up to show where you are and where your focus is focused on. And so like that's just like pure operation stuff. But in terms of like actual like on-set stuff, it's that plus you have to like figure out like shots. Like how do you want to flow from one shot to the next? Like how do you want to like how much zoom do you want to look for? How much like all this sort of stuff, you know? There's just a lot to talk about there in terms of like what I usually do and what I look for, but that's like basically what I have to pay attention to when I'm doing camera stuff for film.
Okay. Well, I mean, as much as I'd like to hear more about that, we do have a lot of ground to cover. So,
Yeah.
so I do want to ask about like how do you handle casting? What is that process like with the process that goes into finding the right body actors, the right voice actors, things of that nature? Can you tell us about that?
Casting's fun. There's two different types of casting that we will typically do: body actors and voice acting. For the body actors, it's a lot more simple. We haven't done this in a while actually, because we've been basically working with the same body actors we've had since forever. but we are gonna do a body acting casting call probably soon-ish. And what that will basically entail is we post all over our Discord, social media, saying, hey, we're looking for body actors, here are the requirements. And like, we'll probably make a form for it, you know, where people can like check out like the times that they're usually free and stuff like that. And so once we do that, then we pick the people that we want to pull for body acting, and then we kind of like train them a little bit on some of the stuff that we usually do for body acting. Like we always have smooth tracking, which is a booth plugin that we buy, and we don't buy, it's free actually. You can add to VRChat, which allows for your trackers to get a little bit more smooth and less choppy. I have it on right now, but my tracking's been kind of weird, so if I like lose my leg or something, that's why. And then we teach them about like how to act and like what we do on set typically and all sort of stuff, and that's basically how we train up our body actors to be part of the film. And from that point on, it's all volunteer based. Like we'll ping for body actors required for a project or for a film session, and they just react if they want to come or not. And that's how we know like how many people to expect and if we need to bother more people. That's how body acting casting calls work. Pretty simple. You usually have to have full body tracking. Like all of our films will be mandatory for that from now on. But for the voice acting, it's so much different. But it's also more interesting, IMO. So we use casting call typically to get our voice acting casts. And basically how that goes is you post your project, all the information about it, payment or an unpaid, like just all that stuff. And then people will audition. And you can like listen to everyone's auditions to each character that they auditioned for. You can list like characters in there. And the best part about this is we get auditions from so many different types of people. People that are like just, you know, they do it as a hobby, but then we also get industry VAs that apply. In fact, Autumn, our precious Autumn, the recent project has like a mixture of both. The leading VA has done like a lot of work for Crunchyroll, and then the secondary VA was someone who does stuff for like Genshin Impact and funny enough some stuff for Fortnite, but and like, you know, that sort of stuff. And then we also have another secondary VA who is just a friend of ours who's been doing stuff with us for a very long time, you know. And so we have like a lot of like variation of like submissions, or I guess auditions for our voice acting side of things, and it's so cool. Like it's not very common or very often where you can be like, yeah, our VA for Autumn, the lead one, has voiced a character in Evangelion, which she has. It's like, oh, that's so cool, you know.
Super cool.
Yeah. That's how that usually goes.
Okay. So like the ladder is something that I'm familiar with. I actually did drop an audition for our precious Autumn. I did.
Wait, you did?
I did, yeah. Yeah, but you know, I don't think it was. The characters are very, very specific, and I know my strengths, so I knew it was gonna be a gamble anyway. So you know, I really, really like. Again, I've been keeping an eye on Studio Penrose for a good bit of time, so like, hey, I'm gonna. I would love to be a part of something like that, so I auditioned, and you know, you cast really, really awesome people, really, really talented people for that. So, are you the only one who like handles like listening through auditions and making a decision? Okay.
Never.
Okay.
So I make it a fun event for our whole studio, our whole staff team. Where when I do the listening to casting calls auditions, like we all get in a call and just like listen together. We go through everyone. So I'm not like usually the only one that like makes a call for this. It's like everyone provides input, and it's really fun to like see that, because like you can see so many different voices and so many different auditions, and like it's always fun when someone's like, yeah, that's the one. Like, yeah, like you can sometimes tell when everyone's just in unison. It's like, okay, that's the one that we want. And always audition though, because like I give that advice to people, you know, who do voice acting, to just always audition, because you never know what we're looking for. It's like we always type things, but then sometimes we select someone that wouldn't normally be what we select for a voice acting role. And certain projects will require a lot different things.
Yeah.
So
100%. Yeah. I mean that's I used to audition all the time back when I am technically a professional voice actress. I've like done audiobooks and stuff. So like the process of auditioning repeatedly is something I'm very familiar with. I don't do a whole lot of it anymore because I'm a streamer now, content creator. So basically that's kind of like, it's been, I still love to do it on stream. So I'm still working on the craft. So it's a kind of a multi-level incorporation of like all the creative things that I love to do in this one little nice like content creator sandwich that I've made over my lifetime. So yeah, I definitely do get that. I know that for many of your films you have largely recorded the body movements and like the mouth movements before the voice acting. And I know in Our Precious Autumn, you flipped it around this time. You did the voice acting first, and then you did the body acting and matching second, essentially. So I obviously I do want to talk about the film specifically, but just in terms of voice acting and the audition process, but also like the recording process. How does that? What is that recording process like? What does that look like? In terms of like being an indie film studio, remote essentially, and what goes into that, and the decisions of like the voice acting and the body acting and how that all fits together.
Yeah. So our typical default, like you mentioned, is like we always do the body acting first and then voice acting after. But for Autumn, we flipped it around because that film is a lot more emotional, and we wanted to accentuate the voice acting and not limit their and restrict them to having to follow body mouth movements. Something to keep in mind is like a lot of animation, they have a lot more control, but like with our stuff, when we do our body acting, we're at the mercy of the body actors, and they're great, but they're not all mouth. They're not all voice actors, and so some certain like expressions and how they say things would be not how the voice actors would do it. And so that's why we flipped it around, because I had a lot more emotional importance with this film, and I wanted the voice actresses and actors to just fully go at it completely unrestricted. And so how we record that though is it's kind of fun. For all these voice actors, we always go on like Discord and do it. And what they do is they have the script beforehand, and if they have the footage, then they have the footage beforehand. But if not, then they get a call with us. And sometimes we have storyboards. Most of the time it's most of our projects don't use like visual storyboards, but we had one this time because we had like an artist that we were working with, and so we gave them the storyboards, and they would do ABC format basically, so three takes of each like line, and then we'd sit in a call, they'd say it, and if we were cool with it, we just move on to the next one. Oftentimes we want like modifications, we tell them like, hey, try this with the end of this sentence, or this one needs more energy, that sort of thing. And usually it's like a couple of us in the VC doing this with them, and then that's how we get all those lines recorded, and then we place them into the project afterwards, just to make sure.
And how does the directing with, I guess, well, I suppose we'll talk about My Precious Autumn, since that's your most recent film. What is the preparation to like have the avatars ready to match up with the expressiveness of the voice acting? Like what went into that preparation and process?
Yeah, so I edited all the voice acting after we got all the voice lines, and then handed them over to the body actors. And so instead of them playing it through their mic, because that like kind of is cumbersome, you have to restrict what you're doing to get that working, I instead like focused on them just memorizing the voice lines and reciting them at the same pacing. They don't have to say them the same way, but the pacing has to be the same so the voice, the visemes on the mouth matches. Which that's difficult, by the way. It's pretty difficult, but like I said, for this film, I wanted the voice lines to be very spot on. And so it took a lot of tries, for the body actors to memorize those lines and then recite them the same way on set, while also doing body movements and also controlling face expressions. And I'd have a production assistant on set, like making sure the voice lines matched up, so they'd be listening to the audio and also looking at the way the body actors would say it.
Okay, yeah, and see, like, and it's that sort of details, is those sorts of details that I actually really like hearing about, because a lot of people don't think about those sorts of things, and like the effort that goes into really kind of aligning things in a way so that everything makes sense, which I think is one of the hardest parts. I mean, aside from like finding good worlds or producing them yourself or finding fitting avatars, like getting like the emotion, whatever it may be, getting that across in a cohesive, like meaningful way is extremely hard. It seems very hard to do in a VR space. So I think it's really interesting to kind of hear about like how that process goes and how you maintain that. Okay, so let's talk about the movies. Let's talk about the movies.
Ooh,
I do want to talk about them, and we'll keep them pretty brief. But I do want to talk about them for as much as we can. So we'll start with Emergence, because I know that is essentially like the I guess we'll say the introduction, even though it's not the first one that you all did. It is well. Let me. Okay. Voicemail was the first one you all did. But Emergence is like the introduction to the universe of New Millennia, even though the movie came after the Penrose Protocol. So we'll kind of start like in kind of chronological order, I suppose. So so what went into that movie? What went into that film? Well, before I ask that question, that's a pretty broad question. So let me kind of talk about it a little bit. Like the idea of like Lucina Mai, being the main character, and just basically her not really knowing what to do, and then being put into a situation where she's kind of like forced to make a decision, pretty immediately. I don't want to spoil it, but she's forced to make a decision, pretty quickly to make this journey to New Millennia, and it's really it's a very straightforward kind of story, which I can appreciate. Everything kind of moves at a pace. Like there's a very clear beginning, there's a middle, and then there's an end, and those beats are kind of very clearly delineated. So with that in mind, what made Emergence a project that you enjoy directing, and what made it like a movie or film that you wanted to have be the start of like the story of New Millennia, and I suppose the character of Lucina Mai?
Yeah, so I guess the reason why I really wanted it to be the start of it was because we wrote all this lore with Penrose Protocol, and in Emergence, obviously it's her starting her journey, and then we kind of really liked that for the studio because it was also us starting our own journey at the time. It's a film that was meant to be like the start of something a lot bigger, and so that was what the mega appeal for it was that, and releasing it on our channel as like the first like Studio Penrose film officially was also really cathartic, because it was she's starting her own journey, unsure, and so on and so forth, and we were doing the exact same thing, and introducing it to New Millennia. We're going to be based in New Millennia. That sort of really tied in. And just to clarify for those who maybe don't know the film release timeline, so Emergence was the first film that we released as a studio, but the Penrose Protocol and Voicemail all came before it, and those were released at Metacosm, with Voicemail being the first one. But I do say that we all, as in, worked on these projects, because the majority, all these projects were done with the same team of us, and so we all were part of these projects, even at the previous studio.
And thank you for the clarification. Yeah, I think I may have gotten like some details mixed up in my explanation, but thank you for clarifying that. So the twist at the end of Emergence, I'm kind of curious about. Like I think I understood that, and I think I understand the intent behind it. That I would imagine will kind of define like the rest of Penrose as an organization, as well as Lucina Mai's journey. So can you talk a little bit about like what was the intent behind that? Because I'm sure that obviously that's foreshadowing. So I obviously, can you talk about that to whatever degree that you can, with regards to that? Because it seems kind of it's kind of interesting that that was the case and that happened at the end.
Yeah, of course. This is probably the part where I say that the series will follow, the series that we're working on will follow this film, and it'll also, unfortunately, let's say, what is it called when you like alter like a pilot story, like go back on it a little bit? I know the word right now.
I know what you're talking about. I know exactly what you're talking about. It's you are yeah.
It's not redact. Redact is like hiding something.
Right.
Basically.
Yeah, I know it's
in the plot.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha.
But
yeah.
But even with that being said, the intention with that ending was Lucina, like, I mean, it's been out enough. I can just spoil it.
Okay.
Kind of. Yeah, it's been out for quite a long time. But after her parents were killed, she finds out that the killer had the same Penrose like intelligence emblem on the gun as Kane does on his cuffs, meaning that they were all kind of doing some sort of work together, in on it. And so she decides to take the risk and join the organization to try to like infiltrate it from inside. And the reason why I bring up the series for this is because it will rewrite some of this. And you'll see exactly how that goes in the series, but Emergence was written as like a pilot almost. And so, like, when we actually get into the bread and butter, things will be a lot more coherent and cohesive. And written to be part of a much more, like, thought out full story, as opposed to being like a one-off.
Okay. And did Emergence, I should probably know this, but did Emergence use existing worlds, or well, obviously the New Millennia world had to be designed, so that makes sense, right? Like,
all those were
custom
existing worlds.
Oh, existing worlds? Okay.
Existing.
Okay,
yeah.
gotcha.
Because we were going low budget for that one. We didn't have the time and the resources at the previous studio to do all this. And so we worked with what we had. Okay.
And I'm curious how that zooming out shot of Lucina running, like how did you how was that filmed for so long while like I know there's a technique in VR called infinite walking. So I'm curious how that was done for such a long period of time, and how that was, I guess, the body actor was able to simulate running for so long while that zooming out was happening.
Yeah, we had them walk on a treadmill or run on a real life treadmill, and then also placed a path for them to run on. Like, it was like a dolly system, which they could sit in, but instead of sit, they'd just run in place, and it would follow a track.
Oh. Was that developed by like the people on your team, or was that like was that something that was already existing like in the world? Like that dolly system.
Was an old asset that was developed by someone else.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
But the treadmill technique we've had for quite a while. There's actually a way to do it without a track needed, like without a dolly needed. You can like run in on your treadmill, it'll move you in game. But it's a little more precise. You know what? I think I take that back. I think that specific shot might have just been done without a dolly. So they were running on their treadmill, and like there's like an not an OSC program. Maybe it is OSC. I don't remember. But it'll like move you in accordance to how you're stepping. It's kind of funny.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, there are so many tools that go into kind of like simulating ideas, and you have to like figure all this stuff out so you can get the sort of effect that you're looking for. And I imagine that all has to be planned beforehand. Like you have to like, I for this particular scene, I need to have this particular asset on this avatar. And is the Lucina avatar, like, is that like a custom avatar? Because I have noticed that the choice of avatars that are used, like I know you said that they're typically booth avatars. Was that the one that used to be your main? The Lucina one?
Yeah. Yep, that's the one. It's a combination of what's called an Elena head. It is the base name, and the body is an Ayo. Back when Ayo used to be like the main the main booth avatar for a while. So it's a little bit outdated. Hence, actually, that's the fun part about the series. We already reworked Lucina's design, and so she still like has the visual same design, color scheme, and everything, but she actually has an updated body now and head, and so it will match all of our avatars very nicely. I'm super excited to share that whenever it gets out.
Okay, nice. All right, so we can move on to the next short film, In a Perfect World. That's about like a 5-7 minute short film. And it's a film about close friends this is what I kind of understood from it. Close friends who are working together, but then one of the friends kind of lost track or lost the connection with their friend that they had made from like the very start, because they were working together, and then perhaps they kind of grew apart because one person got really obsessed with their work and really forgot about like why they started working together in the first place. Obviously, you can kind of, say how right or wrong I am, but that was my interpretation of the film. So can you like tell us a little bit about that, since it seems to be kind of like it's in the Studio Penrose playlist on YouTube, but that was one I hadn't really heard of or heard much about. So can you tell us a little bit about that production and what went into that?
Yeah. So if you actually look at the date, you'll know that it was released way, way, way before Penrose was formed.
Right.
That's one of the films that I made, like just with myself and a couple of friends. So slightly right about the interpretation, but also very wrong.
Okay.
So the actual the film itself is about someone who is overworked, and who are like life is passing by, essentially. They've been approached by people on the train who want to be friends with them, but they just ignored them because they don't care about that stuff. And basically they fell asleep on the train heading home one night and imagined an alternative universe where they actually did chat with the people on the train, meet people in the street and such. Literally, that's the name of the film, In a Perfect World, where they would have actually like taken those opportunities. It was literally all that was meant to be was a test film for the very first project that I ever worked on at Metacosm. Hence why it was released before Penrose.
Right.
And so it was me testing camera stuff, kind of learning how to deal with new camera equipment at the time, and so on and so forth. And it was just like a fun little project. It literally took like a couple days to film, short film type thing.
Okay. Nice.
So yeah.
Does even as like a film that was a test film, like do you like, does it have like a special place in your heart? Does it kind of I'm assuming it obviously helped get you started with Metacosm Studios at the time, and so like I guess when you look at that short film now, like what do you think about it? Like what's your perception on it now that you've kind of learned so much?
It's a really good film to like keep around, it has it's really short and it has like a ton of flaws, conventionally speaking, but it's like one of the first, so I hold it in a special place. And I do watch it again every so often because it is fun to see how things have changed. Like a lot has changed. Not blend shapes, Fizzbone like updates, like clipping changes, camera, like how I hold my camera even changed from that film to the like recent films of mine. It's a lot different. So it's like a little bit of like subtle stuff, color grading too. Like a lot of that stuff's different now.
Okay. All right. So next short film that I'll touch on is we'll tell about this one too. Love Sorrow. Love Sorrow, which is it's essentially it's a piano, it's a musical kind of piece where it kind of shows the history of Lucina and her parents' time together that they spent before they were shot and killed, and emergence more or less. I'd like to know like what was the inspiration for doing that particular short. Why why choose a piano piece or like a piano kind of atmosphere to do that? And that was also a VR 3D film also, which is also very interesting. So like can you like talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So one of the curators of Raindance Immersive reached out to me and was like, "Hey, is it possible to do something like this? You know, a 3D 360 film in VR?" And I was like, "I don't know. Is it? I've never tried." And so they were like, "Look, if you want to try, it'd be really cool. We could showcase this both in London, like give people at the film festival like a headset to watch this, and then also just showcase it in Raindance Immersive as a non-competitive film, like an outside of competition film." And I was like, "Yeah, we can try something. We'll see how it works." Cause like it was just weird, like the idea of like a 360 film in VR, where you're in VR watching the film. And so that's why we did that. Like that's how the project actually started, was like, you know, Raindance talking to us about it. As for the choice of the subject matter, we had released Emergence, and because Emergence was part of the last year's selection, we kind of wanted to do something with the same characters, and we wanted to keep it really simple. And because like 360 film is very unbeknownst to us, we don't know what we're doing, and so I wanted something just super basic. And I was like, okay, well let's just have our main character play a beautiful piano piece, and have people look around as it plays. Because then you can just relax to the music. It's very simple and it's not too like overstimulating for something that's such a weird medium. And we had one of our composers who composed the Autumn soundtrack, Eliza. They were the one that like played the piano in that scene, like the actual like piece that you hear, and it was just literally a showcase of tech. Basically, can we do it? And we could. There are so many problems with this, by the way. Like, for instance, you can't record any higher than 4K, otherwise it'll like break your computer. But, like, if you how it works is it converts a rectangular image to a 3D space. So you record in a rectangular screen recording, but then you can use Adobe and convert it to a 360 video. But like obviously, if you're recording in a like 2K to 4K screen, when you stretch it around, it's gonna stretch the image. And it's gonna like lose quality. I had to upscale that thing to 8K for it to be remotely viewable. And even when you do that, it's stuttery as hell in VR. Like it's too much. VR can't handle an 8K video, you know? And so it proved. So what we ended up doing for Raindance to showcase it was we kept it at just 2K, and literally just said deal with the pixelation. Like the tech can't handle it. It literally can't. And so that's what we learned about that, 360 thing. It is not there yet.
Okay. And was Eliza playing that piece live?
No, they recorded it with their piano, and then we just played it over the body actors, like audio, and then they had to sync up the, like they were kind of coached because I believe was Eliza recording this? I think it was, or maybe I don't remember actually 100%. But they looked at an actual video recording of how the fingers are on the keyboard, and tried their best to mimic it. It's not perfect, but they didn't just button mash essentially the keyboard. They actually tried to sync it up as best they could.
Okay, yeah. I definitely did notice that when I saw it. So yeah, definitely. It's like it really, definitely seemed very much kind of like a show of the tech, and just kind of a little kind of like small preview of the past for the character. So that's really it was just interesting to kind of run into that and see that, and so let's go into like the ones that I think people have potentially heard of. So I think we should dig into the Penrose Protocol. We should just kind of dig into that. There's a lot going on in that short film. And I admittedly, I will say, I admittedly did watch the original. That was, that's available in VFI. And then I later found out there was a remaster version, which I had a chance to kind of like briefly experience and briefly kind of look over. Obviously, like, the opening scene did not exist in the original. So that was pretty cool. I actually really appreciate that. Like you can see like Lilith like doing the whole infiltration thing, as is, it's very, very cool stuff. So yeah, there's a lot to kind of like dig into here. So obviously, that world was completely designed, custom designed, absolutely. The organization Metamax, the new millennia police department, the cars and everything. All of that was like really, really interesting to kind of see, and it was very, very obviously very much custom for this project, which was very, very awesome. I do want to kind of just kind of start with something a little bit silly. The characters April Larson and Lilith Windsor. Was it a deliberate choice for them to both have white hair?
Oh my god, the rest of my studio is gonna make fun of me for this. I just like characters with white hair. I like short hair characters, and I like characters with white hair. Yeah, that's basically kind of it.
Okay. It's like I like at first it's kind of hard to like kind of discern that, because like when you jump into the flashback 2 months ago when you see April doing the infiltration into the building, she's there, and then right behind her is another person with white hair. It's just like, well, yeah. It's just very, very interesting. I was wondering if those were like deliberate choices, but it seems like they were, because it's just what you like to see, creatively speaking. So, all right, cool. All right. So the gunplay in Penrose Protocol is probably some of the best I've ever seen. I know there's pretty like I know people have like done really awesome choreography in terms of VR and things like that, like recently and such, but to have to create a world in which you have like you can shoot somebody, there's like gunshot wounds, and you shoot guns and there's ricocheting off of like the walls and stuff. Like, how was all of that done? How was all that implemented? Was that just all like part of the world building, not world building, but the world design for that particular building that was being infiltrated?
Yeah. So guns were added to Avatar. So every Avatar that had a gun, it was on their avatar, and the guns themselves were designed with particle effects, and so that's why you saw like them shooting. And the particle would go as far as hitting the next collider. So we had to make sure that all of the walls in the buildings had colliders, as well as like objects, and then on the train as well. All the walls had colliders, so we were all set there. So all the guns were placed on avatars, and the worlds didn't actually need to be fully custom made for this. Like for instance, the only custom worlds that were made were the Medimax buildings, and then the interior of the police department after she gets fired from it. All the other worlds were actually like existing worlds.
Oh, okay.
Like the train was an existing world. We actually reached out to the world creator to have it custom like edited though for the film. Like some stuff was removed from it. Some of the lighting was altered as well. But the other worlds were existing. In the remastered version, there's a ending scene with like a computer in a server room that's custom made. And then the end scene itself, which takes place in this restaurant, was not custom made. It was a world that exists. I think it's like modeled after Greece or something like that. But yeah, so that's like kind of the mixture. And then, like I said, the guns were all just on the avatars. The actual gunfight scenes were choreographed by Peach and another body actor named India Waffles. And they did some research into like obviously police tactics and just tactical stuff in order to get that to like look decent. I'm sure that if you are in law enforcement or in the military or something, you're gonna watch it and be like, they didn't do that right, and yeah, you're probably right. But we tried our best, you know, like we're not in that stuff. We don't know 100%, and so yeah, that's how that whole choreography was done. Was they planned that shootout sequence. It was, oh man, it was a lot of work. They storyboarded it too.
Wow.
Unity to storyboard the actual scene.
Wow. Yeah, that's like I just looking at that scene, I'm just like, wow, the amount of like time and effort and shooting all of that is like insane. It's wildly like I was just very, very like impressed with what went into that. I do kind of want to talk about the story of Penrose Protocol and like what went into like that whole thing with like I believe the collapse of Metamax and what I believe to be like the precursor to perhaps, you know, I guess many other events that take place in New Millennia. I was gonna say one other thing, but you revealed something earlier that kind of the term that you were looking for before is retcon.
Retcon, that's it.
Yes,
that is it.
yeah.
Yep.
I just remembered. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. So like that whole concept of like everything that went into Penrose Protocol, like in the story of like April Larson. So can you tell us a little bit about that and what that story was meant to capture?
Yes. Oh my god. I have flashbacks from when we were in the writing room for this stuff. So, okay. So we wanted to do something actiony. We wanted to do something kind of bold, and I wanted to push the limits of like VR film as much as I possibly could. That's why there's a gun scene. The opening scene is a continuous opening sequence where the camera stays in like continuous recording, and then the ending scene ends with like a crazy fight sequence. And honestly, it was like really ambitious, and like I'm really proud of everyone for like actually making this happen. But so the lore of all this is we wanted to do an action like film, and we wanted to have something kind of existential. We wanted to like finally do something with our own world and our universe, because we've been wanting to do that for a while. And at the time, we were watching Psycho Pass as well as I think Arcane came out at that time.
Okay.
Sometime close to when it released. And so we were like in the world building mood. And so we wrote out like a lot of random stuff. And I remember the exact team that helped a lot of this the lore. After Protocol, I'm skipping a little bit, but I'll go right back. After we finished Protocol, 3 of us got together to write like the rest of the world's lore. And that was me, Quinster, and Spades were the 3 people that we all got in the writing room and did all this stuff. But with the actual lore, we wanted like a philosophical battle between 2 characters. And so we were like, okay, what sort of thing? And we were like, okay, well, you know, it's very typical action crime thing to have like a police-ish type side and then like the vigilante side, you know? And so that's why we came up with having April versus Lilith, the 2 characters. We wanted April to represent the kind of like, hey, law and order justice sort of system, whereas we wanted Lilith to represent the vigilante justice system. And so that was like kind of the baseline. Now, we wanted to have like a reason for the audience to kind of see both sides and kind of feel like a little bit conflicted. And so that's why we introduced the Medimax situation as like a past conflict and then also the current conflict. So Lilith was basically stealing information from Medimax to release to the public, to whistleblow.
Right.
Basically, if you think about it, it's basically stuff like, oh yeah, so you know, all the stuff that they manufacture causes addiction, drugs should not cost this much, like that sort of stuff is what she was trying to release. And that's what that intro scene in the remastered version is. But April, you know, being on the side of Penrose on law and order, doesn't think that that is a very fair and just way to get justice. And most people, I think, originally would be like, oh yeah, no, release those documents, whistleblow it, like all, like I don't care, like that stuff should be released. And that's kind of what we want people to think. And then for the flashback sequence, we see the history of it all. You get revealed that April was formerly part of the not NYPD, NMPD, and basically that same criminal organization, the vigilante group, also caused a lot of harm and damage in order to get some of their previous documents. It also was revealed that April knew this guy that was in the building, that the CEO person that got, not CEO, the VP person that got blown up.
Yeah.
And he was one of the people that was trying to do stuff the correct way, and like kind of like change the company from the inside. And obviously there's a lot to debate about whether or not this stuff would actually work. But that's the point.
Right.
You know, you're supposed to like not fully agree with either side. Cassandra, which is a criminal organization, gets their stuff out through every means necessary, killing innocents, yada yada yada, you know. And April sees things a little bit too idealistically, but obviously, you know, the world isn't ideal. And so that's why they clash. Huge dispute of sort of morals and
ideals,
I guess, ethics. Yeah. Ideals, yep. And that's where we get that fight sequence at the very end. They argue for a bit before they actually just kind of blow up at each other.
Yeah, that ending scene, basically they both die.
Sure.
But do they?
Something like that.
Something like that.
I don't know. Do they die? Do we see their casket? Actually, no, we do. We see one we see one thing. April's in the remastered version on the computer screen, she's listed as deceased.
Okay. Like on.
That's all we show though. I don't know about the other one.
Right. It honestly, like, assuming that everything played out in the remastered version the same as the original in terms of the final fight scene, like that whole thing, like I would expect Lilith to be dead after that. But
can you die with a shot to the side of the stomach? I mean, you could, but you could also live. I don't know.
Well, yeah. I mean, you're right. You're right. That is true. That's true. Yeah. Okay. Well, you're right. You're right.
Knows?
Yeah. Who knows? Yeah. Yeah. I will definitely keep an eye out for that. But yeah, that's okay. I do appreciate that. And honestly, I'm very much for psychological, like philosophical debates. Like I like that sort of thing, like in general. So I really appreciated that particular scene of like, you know, like no, I'm right, no, I'm, and actually the thing about Lilith is that she wasn't even trying to be right. It was just like this is like what it is. Like this is like actual truth, and this is what I'm doing about it. She wasn't even trying to be right. And that's really wild
kind of
thing.
A real one.
Yeah, true actually, yeah. So like I appreciate that a lot. And also, like I really enjoyed like you mentioned earlier, the long filming scene. Very, very reminiscent of like there are some films like live action films that use that same technique, which is like honestly really, really hard to do. And also like actually like really risky. Like you have to kind of like commit to everything, and like, you know, obviously there wasn't a whole lot going on during that whole like camera scene, but it's still impressive to kind of just go with it, and you know, and just hope that no weirdness is going to happen. VRChat's not going to glitch out. You're essentially committing to the shot.
Definitely did a bunch.
I'm sure. Yeah.
2 film sessions for that single shot.
Damn. Yeah. See, like that's what I mean. Like, and like that's why I appreciate it, because like I know that that's hard to do, and to pull that off does take a level of effort and just, I guess, endurance, we'll say, to pull off. So I do want to mention that.
Yeah.
The gunshot wounds. Like, how do you do like shoot gunshot wound in VRChat? Like, how does that work?
Oh, it's a texture on a radio menu control. So basically, whenever they hot swap the texture, and we artistically draw the blood splotch or the stuff on the texture.
Okay.
So this is literally just a texture thing. Fun fact.
That you add it to the avatar to like have access to.
Oh wait, are you talking about the beginning scene when the guy gets shot at the desk?
Well, I mean that too, like that as well too.
Oh, that's VFX'd.
Oh.
Yeah, that's added in post.
Okay, all right. So the other stuff, that's all textures. Okay.
Yes.
Gotcha. All right. Nice. All right. So the explosion at the end, was that okay? If I really think about this from like a technical perspective, how would you do an explosion in VRChat if the world itself is, if the Metamax building is a custom build or custom designed? You could just have something happen in the building at that time that's triggered at a specific time, and that will happen. So how was that executed? Like, just like from a technical perspective on the back end, how did that explosion actually like trigger and kind of come to fruition?
So we had Peach like do an explosion animation, and it was controlled via toggle. And so there was a panel in the world, someone pressed the button when we needed it, and it just would blow up the building.
Okay.
It's actually relatively simple.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
it was a little difficult because of we wanted to show like particles and stuff flying out, and so that had to be it was tedious to do that, and obviously the lighting and whatnot too. But it was all like world based. Oh, she made like a speed control on it too, where you can like slow down the explosion. That's why we had that slow motion shot.
Of the initial.
It's like kind of wild. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. Like I had a feeling that like from a technical perspective, it wasn't that complicated. If you kind of like really think about it, just for like, if you can build it, you can just trigger it basically with the animation. So yeah, that's cool. It's very, very cool. What was the hardest thing about doing Penrose Protocol?
Oh god, it was like every one of the scenes. That they were all really difficult. The shooting sequence was tedious. The continuous shot sequence was difficult. The choreography, actually no, it was probably the choreography for the fight scene at the end was probably the worst. So in film choreography in VRChat, there's different layers to how difficult it can get. Like punches are quick, meaning that they're a lot easier to do. But what isn't quick is like a grab. So when you grab and push someone or you hold someone, it's a lot more tedious and difficult to do. And there's a few of those in that sequence. But the reason of why it was way more difficult than our typical stuff was because we wanted to keep the shots steady. So in a lot of like films, they kind of like
shake the camera,
where they shake the camera, they make the shots they cut really quick to emphasize the like action of it. But we were like, no, we don't want to do that. It's kind of a cop-out. And so my whole thing with this film is we're going to push the limits of everything. And so a lot of that fight sequence had slow and steady shots, which means that there were sequences to every single shot. And you couldn't just cut after single movements. You had to keep it all like together and time it all together. And so like it was way more difficult than if we were just say punch and then cut the shot, punch and then cut the shot, like hug them and then cut the shot, like that's a lot easier to do. But because we put everything in groups of shots, it was a lot more tedious.
Okay. And what are you most proud of from Penrose Protocol?
I'm torn between the fight choreography sequence and the opening continuous shot sequence. The fight choreography sequence was choreographed by Crispy Wisp, who is our fight choreographer. They know a lot of stuff about like martial arts and then also like fighting. And so I give him the credit for that entire scene. It was very well done. But I'm gonna say, actually, I'll narrow it down. I'm gonna say that fight sequence is what I'm the most proud of because I really like it. I just really, really like that sequence.
Okay. So, Lilith or April?
Oh, it's gonna be Lilith.
Okay.
I already hinted at it.
Okay.
She's a real one.
Yeah, okay.
Come on,
So,
she's a real one.
Gonna do the Snowden all the way. You're just gonna go all the way.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. Cool. All right. So let's talk about voicemail. That was one of the films that you made alongside Metacosm, like right before. So that's a much shorter film compared to the others. So it's a relatively simple concept, I would say. You know, a guy is at work, he misses a phone call, you know, despair ensues. So like what was the impetus for creating that, and I guess what inspired you to do that, like to make that film?
That project was kind of odd. So it was filmed in 2 weeks. Filmed, written, everything in 2 weeks. 2.5, I think, if you count like the very initial concept of it. Which is very difficult to do for something like that. And obviously there was a lot of like custom avatar work and then custom effects work that was done for that one. And we just wanted to do that because HorrorCon was right around the corner and it was October, and we were like, oh, let's do something spooky. I like spooky stuff, but I don't usually do that. It's not my forte. And so we decided on psychological horror. And I was like, you know, I'm like, there's a lot of like horror stories about people missing phone calls and it being like the last time you could talk to someone. And so that was kind of what that was playing off of, was the idea that our main character feels guilt for missing the phone call that their partner gave them right before they like got in a car accident, essentially. And so we thought, okay, psychological horror, cool. You know, we're playing off of guilt. Now, there's a world that fits this so well, and that was Dr. Morrow's organism, because, yeah, like, just the idea of them being like in this dreamscape hell. You know, everything's messed up and twisted, and everything feels foreign, right? And obviously, the ghost of his partner's just like running around. It's like, it's a kind of nightmare feel, you know? And so that's why we chose that world. And so the project was done really quickly and submitted to HorrorCon, which we screened it there. It was really difficult to do that quick, but it was kind of fun, and I love that project. Yeah.
Okay. What were some of the I've actually run through the entirety of Organism, which is why I was immediately able to discern what world was being used. So like, for the sake of like making something very quick, very fast, very very spooky, was this a project that you like would want to expound upon? Do you think that it was, because it was done so quickly, is it something that you really enjoyed and that you appreciate? And I imagine that like when you make something, you generally want it to be like something that you can say, yeah, I did that and I appreciate that. So I guess, what are your feelings of Voicemail in terms of like kind of looking back on that project and what went into it?
Yeah. So, okay. I really love it. I really, really do. Even though it was made so quickly and like, you know, so like, it was just a really quick project. It was short too. I really hold that one dear in my heart. And I'm gonna be honest, like I would argue that my best cinematography was in that film because it's like more abstract, and so I got to do like a lot more abstract like cinematography that I normally wouldn't get to do with like more realistic projects. Like there's a few shots I really liked in that one, like when the main character like falls down like it's almost like a hallway thing, and like he trips and falls sideways essentially. And then there's a shot where he transfers to real life and then like falling through the void, and the void fades away to reveal like the location of the car accident. There's also that scene where he's like falling into the water and drowning, kind of like Skyfall from James Bond film. And like there's just, those are really, I just really love those shots. Like I haven't gotten a chance to do stuff like that ever since, you know, because all the other films I've worked on are a lot more set in reality. But so I really like this film. I love it.
Can you like talk more about what went into doing those shots? Because like I try to conceptualize like how does one create create a drowning kind of sequence where like, you know, you're actually kind of like falling. And that's one of the things that I've personally struggled with, that concept of simulating falling in VR. Obviously you can like be very high up and then fall down, but to do so like on your back in that way, and to kind of like really give off that sense of like you're sinking kind of deal. Like how is that done, and how do you shoot something like that?
Yeah, so that specific scene was done with our body actor laying on a stool, like on their back, and just like flailing around slowly. And the world was like it had like water physics, and so if you jumped into the water and sunk, it would actually like slowly sink you down.
Oh.
And so we combined that with the laying on a stool to make that effect, and it actually was like relatively believable too, which was kind of funny. And in order to get that shot specifically to have it lined up the way it did, I basically had my camera ready. I'd cue the actor to jump in, and I'd jump in with them, and basically have to like fall and drown in the water with them.
Oh.
It was kind of funny.
Okay.
It took a few tries, but then like one of the tries landed the shot, and like that was when we all knew it was like, okay, that was the one, and that's the one you see in the film. It's really weirdly difficult, but it's also kind of easier than most people think. It depends on the world, you know, with the water physics.
Yeah, and like finding something like that, like finding specific worlds that fit your specifications. Like, can you tell us a little about kind of like an offshoot of talking about voicemail, but just in general, like how hard is it to find specific worlds that are in line with your specifications without having to like invest in like world design?
It can be very difficult. With those worlds, we did a lot of scouting. Like we had to. We searched up like water, and we tried jumping in every single world and seeing if it looked right. That's the kind of the fun and difficult part, is like finding the right world. We look for a lot of things in these worlds. Lighting is a huge one. If the lighting looks good, if the visual part of the world, like it's just too contrasty, or if the color looks weird, like just quality of worlds is what we have to pay attention to. And so it took a lot of scouting to find that one. That one was not part of Organism.
Yeah. Okay. Like I from like I actually have like I forget the official name for it, but I have a fear of void spaces. So if I were to have to jump into the water and sink down, that would scare the fuck out of me. I don't know if I could actually do that. But like it was like that's really, really cool. That's the method that you use to kind of approach that sort of thing. It makes sense. It makes sense to kind of get that effect. Okay. So yeah, voicemail I thought was like really, really interesting. Kind of like even like the initial shot of like kind of everyone kind of randomly turned into mannequins at the beginning. that was like Were those all like bodies?
That was kind of fun.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, those were all people. I was like, just hold still, don't move. You know?
Okay. Damn. Okay. That's interesting. Cool. All right, so let's talk about the latest installment from Studio Penrose, Our Precious Autumn. I really love this movie. I keep using the term movie. It's a film. Like I enjoyed this film very, very much. It reminded me of and I think a lot of creative people can feel like a connection to this particular film because it reminds you to continue to chase after the thing that you have always been passionate about. If you sometimes you put aside your dream for someone else's, and sometimes you have to really just be like, hey, maybe it's time for me to, really chase after my own and create my own because, I love this and I have forgotten why I love doing this so much. So, and I relate to that quite a bit. I used to be a writer. I had a small business for a short period of time. I wrote stories and stuff. So I really kind of relate to that passion. So, Ami as a character, I'll start with something kind of light. Ami very clearly has a very similar eye design to your avatar, which I noticed pretty immediately. So I'm wondering if that was deliberate, and I guess what was the thought behind that thought process behind her character design?
Ami was designed before my Uriki, so this avatar. But like I said, I kind of have like a type of avatar that I favor, and so it kind of makes sense. They're all kind of similar like that. So that's kind of why.
Okay, gotcha. So we already talked about recording voice acting before everything else, so we've already touched on that. I like while watching this, I noticed that this movie had a number of. It probably had the most, aside from Penrose Protocol, it probably had the most interactions, like I guess, like with other people's body, like that I've seen in any other film that I've seen from Studio Penrose. So I really respected that because it's very hard to do those sorts of interactions and make them look realistic. So can you tell us a little bit about that and just kind of how you're able to pull that off in a way that really felt real and like as emotionally striking as this movie was?
Yeah. So we tried to introduce as much like object interactions with this one as we could.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that. So like holding manga books, touching things, like laying down in bed. Like there was a lot of like environmental interactions here. I wanted this film to feel a lot more lively because of that, and I wanted the audience to kind of like feel like this is actually their life, And so we had like a lot of stuff like object-wise, but in terms of like human interaction-wise, the train sequence where she gets rescued off the platform, that one's actually just choreography like we've been doing for a while. The one that people always like talk about is the hugging scene when the child variation or version of herself like hugs the
jumps into her in that way. Yeah. That was really like. I would imagine you just have like the body double, well, the body actor just had like something physical there, and it was right at the spot when they just jumped into maybe like a large teddy bear at IRL or something, or something to that effect. But you can tell us, how it all happened. Yeah.
So you're wrong.
Okay.
That's all animated. That whole shot was animated.
Wait.
It was
Okay.
Animated in Blender by a friend of ours named Shigemori, and they took that animation and exported to Unity, where the entire environment, that's a wholesome world,
right?
Was used. And so that's why it looks like it's filmed in VRChat, but it was actually animated and filmed in Unity.
Wow. Okay. Tricky.
But I'm glad that I tricked you. That's good that it looks similar to the rest of them.
Yeah, but the thing about it, like it looks it. I guess maybe the moment is so intense that you kind of you very easily get tricked by it because it looks you're just kind of in the moment from it, and like but. Yeah. I suppose like the leap into Ami also just feels like it's so smooth, and like I'm like that, like I should have, well, there's no way I could have known, but it looks really good. It's done incredibly well, animated really, really well. I don't think it would have been possible to get that similar effect with actual people because of just how VRChat IK like interacts.
Yep. We tried. We actually absolutely tried, but the biggest problem that we found out, and that's why we animated this scene, was actually the kneeling part. So like feet don't interact with the ground, and your feet would not bend the way that they would in real life in VRChat, and so it looked really clunky, like really stiff, and we were just like, no, we're not doing it like this. We're gonna animate the scene.
Okay. Wow. Okay, that's super cool. I love that. So the manga that was used in our Precious Autumn, is that something that you all plan on doing? Like is that like an offshoot perhaps project that you're thinking of like working on? Because like I could tell, like even for the very beginning of the movie, there are a lot of like elements, like there's like posters on the wall, like you said, there's like books like there and there, like everything seems very, very kind of real and tangible in that space. So I'm kind of curious about like the manga and like just how that all ties into the story. Do you plan on like doing anything else with that?
Oh yeah. So okay. So we actually did write. We wrote the mangas. There's two of them. There's Seeds of Life, and then Your Precious Autumn was the name of the original version of the manga. Then it got changed to Our Precious Autumn, the name in the manga. But we had to write the kind of synopsis of both of them because we had to design the cover and design the lore behind Your Precious Autumn in order to make the plot make sense. And so if you actually pause in the film, you can actually read the synopsis on the back of each of the manga covers, which does actually explain what those are. And we won't be doing that though, because both of those manga require full like writing and lore, and it'd be way too expensive. Like we are not built to be mangaka. Like, it's gonna be just thousands of dollars to get this done, and a lot of time. And so they were just made for the film. But they do have like actual lore. Your Precious Autumn, the manga that the characters came from in that scene where they where Ami watches her characters like argue in their apartment.
Yeah.
That whole manga was very much like kind of spelled out in order to write these scenes. So basically you have two college students who had a dream to open a film studio together. But one of them falls into the pit of, I should probably actually get a good job, good paying, stable job. And the other one wants to keep their dreams. And they kind of clash because like of that. Ends up being that they don't actually follow through with their dreams because of that huge argument. That's what that scene was in the apartment. Kind of like drifted apart afterwards. And this isn't really said in the film, but the original name, Your Precious Autumn, implies that the manga has a pretty bad ending, like a sad ending. Because it's like, this is your project, not ours anymore. That's why the name gets changed, is she rewrites the actual manga to have a better ending. The original intention was those two separate, and it's like a really depressing ending. One of them like does move and fall out their dreams, the other one doesn't. And the changed version of the manga actually has them following dreams together after they make some realizations about the way that they're living, essentially. Have you ever seen the movie La La Land? That is what that is written similarly to.
Okay.
It was influenced by that.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. I haven't seen La La Land, but I'm familiar with the premise of it. So
yeah,
it's cool. It's cool. Very interesting. Well, there's a lot about, like, we've kind of talked about Our Precious Autumn, like, pretty, like in bits and pieces throughout the interview, actually. So, I think we can, like, discuss, like, I think the scene that really kind of, I guess I was kind of confused as to, like, about, like, Ami, like where Ami's workplace, because her workplace feels like, because she's like working like super late, and then she like goes home, and it just has the same kind of like feel as like the office. And then it's kind of like, I guess the kind of time shift between those scenes of like her being at work, going home, eating, her friends coming in to give her food, and then her kind of just going back to work. Like, was that supposed to be like in a way like seamless, and like she's constantly just working, and like you're not really supposed to tell the difference between like just everything blends together type deal?
Yep, that's all her life is, just work.
Okay.
That's the intention with those. That's why it feels like she doesn't actually like ever do anything except for working.
Right, yeah. Okay, yeah.
And so you actually can follow the time progression if you pay like super close detail wise. There's clocks in most of these scenes, so I made sure to focus like the clocks in a lot of these shots to show like how she actually like does her day.
Yeah.
And it's basically she works all day and night. And like even then, like she in the shot in her apartment where she's like shown drawing before the next day, and she goes back to work and gets yelled at by her bosses. The clock, I think it says like 12 something, so like past midnight. And then like the next day she's already there in the morning. So it's like she she doesn't actually really sleep.
Yeah,
Essentially.
which is definitely shown by those black lines under her eyes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's and like a lot of there are so many like little things about the character design and the intent behind it that really kind of hits home, and it's really well done. I did want to talk about the what was it? I guess. Oh God, there was a point in the movie that I really felt that was really striking. But I guess we can just talk about like just Our Precious Autumn as like as a production. Why a mangaka, and why kind of lean into that sort of storyline?
It's because the entire film is about me.
Ah.
It was about my journey, about nearly quitting filmmaking. If you put some pieces together, it kind of makes sense. Actually, you can even piece together some of it based on what I've said in the interview today or the podcast. So I value stability, and you can see where this is going. And so, like, I wrote this story because I couldn't figure out if I should leave or like if I should make a new studio. I burnt myself out, essentially, working at my previous place, and it was either I leave or I stay, you know, and I didn't know what to do because staying implies stability. I mean, previous studio had a lot of subscribers and a lot of views, and a lot of people in the community liked the studio, you know, and so I had safety, but at the same time I wasn't really happy. I mentioned like overwork and all sort of stuff, which, you know, connect the dots there.
Yeah.
And eventually I told myself, okay, you know what, like, you're just not gonna be happy, just leave, you know, like it's time. And that's what Ami does at the very end, is she does leave her job, she continues making her dreams, and that's how Our Precious Autumn finally gets released. And so that's kind of the basis behind all of the film, essentially, was that's why she's a mangaka, because manga artists are overworked, underpaid, and are creatives that do very similar things to filmmakers. You know, we filmmakers are often underpaid, overworked, and also, you know, if they have to work under someone, it can be very difficult. You know, creatively limited is a thing I like to say. That's why the choice of the mangaka was done.
Well, it definitely nails it for sure. Yeah. So
Thank you.
yeah, I really enjoyed that. Like it was it's been really like wonderful to really dig into all of these films and to kind of see like all of these films were directed by you, right? They were all like directed by you? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just want to make sure I saw that right in like the credits. So yeah, all of them were directed by you, and like, can you like just kind of briefly kind of talk about like just like how does like when you like look back on being a director and being and involving yourself with all these films and telling these stories, are you excited for the future, like of like what you can make and continue to be making, even if it is just for fun?
Yeah, of course. So every one of these films has flaws, and I maintain that. I nitpick my stuff like a lot, and with every project that we do, we learn from them. And like obviously with the time in every project we kind of learn new tricks and new like techniques, and so like our quality of the film will improve over time. And so I'm really excited for our next projects. Like I mentioned the series a bunch already. Like I'm really excited about that. And there's quite a lot going on, and I'm really happy with like every one of these projects, even with their faults and even with like difficulties of production and like, you know, execution and release and stuff like that. I'm really actually happy about Autumn's, like how it's been doing. It was okay. So Emergence was our first film, but like I said, it wasn't made in like it didn't start its life at Penrose, but Autumn did. And so it was like our fully, ours film. And the film also had different intentions than like our previous stuff. So with Autumn, I wanted to bring it to film festivals, and so it did. We made it to Raindance Immersive, and then we also made it to other festivals, one of which was in New Jersey, and so you could see the film screened in person there.
Wow.
And so it was like I really wish I made it, because I was invited to obviously attend the screening for the film festival, but it was also during the time of Raindance, and so schedules clashed and it just didn't work. But yeah, like a huge thing that has been happening recently is because of these films that we've been releasing recently, and because of like the Film Jam, and because of VRChat just did a showcase on Studio Penrose, like they just released it.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, it's been like an influx of people just like coming here and like taking interest in the studio and everything. And so I'm like super happy and excited to actually do the next project. And like I mentioned earlier, I'm not the only director. There's other directors that are about to release stuff at the studio here too. And so there's quite a lot going on. It's a little quiet right now because a lot of it's behind the scenes. But there's a lot to look forward to. I'm super excited.
Awesome. I will be looking forward to seeing what you all put out. I've been really impressed with all of your work, and I absolutely I can't wait to see what comes out of the studio. 'Cause honestly, I think you all are very talented. You all really have passion for what you do, and it's something that I can truly relate to in terms of aiming for your passion and sticking with something even if it seems like no one really cares or no one's really kind of looking at it. I believe that eventually, maybe someday, if it's truly good, if it's truly really good stuff, somebody will notice and you'll have your time in the sun. So it looks like that's happening for you guys, and I honestly cannot wait to see what comes of it. So yeah. So I do have one more question for you. Well, two more actually. If you can give any manner of advice to the people who are watching and listening to the podcast right now, what would that be? It could be about anything that we talked about. It could be anything that we didn't talk about. It doesn't have to be related at all. It could come straight from you. What would you like to say to the people who are listening?
I know this is gonna sound really generic, but like I would say take care of yourself. And the reason why I say that is because a lot of what like what I do, and then what other people do, whatever your guys' hobbies are, whatever friends you guys have, and whoever you're close to, it can be a very let's say upsetting time. And if you don't take care of yourself, then life feels a lot more difficult. And so if you aren't taking care of yourself, then you can't do the stuff that you find fun, and you can't be with your friends, and so on and so forth. That was a huge lesson that I learned through the whole process of this film stuff. Was like I wasn't taking care of myself during the earlier stages of film production, and obviously that impacts a lot of things. And I didn't really think it did, but it did, And so that's usually the advice I give new filmmakers, but it's also advice I think people should think about in their just life, Value yourself, take care of yourself.
Yeah, I agree with that totally. And where can people find you?
Oh, yay! So you can find I'll say Studio Penrose. You can find Studio Penrose on YouTube. Our handle's just Studio Penrose. You can also find us on Twitter, Blue Sky, and we made an Instagram because apparently Instagram's a thing. And so we're all in there under the handle Studio Penrose. We have our VRChat group. That's also fun for events and such. But you can really find us and talk to me and all of us on our Discord. Discord.gg/Penrose is the name of it. And that's where we do our everything, announcements, casting calls, what we're doing. I've been doing this new thing at the studio where I feel like I want to be more public with what we're doing, and so I now have studio updates every month where I list out what we're doing and how it's going. And so I made that because people don't know what we're doing all the time, and it seems kind of quiet. And so Discord is like honestly the best place. So if you join our Discord, you can chat with me, and I post like stupid stuff on Discord all the time. So.
All right. Thanks so much for sharing. And for those of you who are looking to find me and what I do, you can find me over at, if you're watching this on Twitch, you can find me over at youtube.com/Nepherti. I've made a number of shorts in the past. You can find the entire collection of my entire archive for my streams, even as far back as my very, very first stream. But most importantly, you can find all the entire playlist of all the podcast episodes of the Sweet Talkin' Podcast over at that channel if you're interested in seeing more of people who I've interviewed over the many years I've been doing this. And of course, if you're watching this on YouTube right now, you can come over and find me at twitch.tv/Nepherti. If you would like to watch me live and see all the content that I do, I don't just do interviews. I don't just do, streams. I do a lot of different stuff. So come through, hang out, and I'd really appreciate seeing and meeting some of you over there. And you can also find me over at Twitch. Sorry, I said Twitch. I meant Twitter, or x.com/Nepherti. With both Twitch with 2 eyes, Nepherti with 2 eyes on Twitch, 2 eyes on Twitter, and 1 eye on YouTube because names get taken. So yeah, woe is me. So, and also if you want to learn more about the podcast, you can find more about that over at Sweet Talking Pod. You can follow that account on Twitter. We have updates of who I'm interviewing, of people who are coming through, and episodes are when episodes are released. So come over there and see that there. And I do have a TikTok, which I have not posted anything on. So, but I hope to do that very soon and hope to get that off the ground relatively soon. So feel free to follow me over there if you'd like to support me over there. The TikTok is tiktok.com/@Nepherti with 1 eye VT. So Nepherti VT, basically. Just search for that and you should be able to find me. But we're going to go into the post conversation of our podcast this evening, and that will be something that you can find over at Patreon, which you can support for just $3 if you would like to subscribe and get access to all my previous post conversations with past guests. It gives you the entire collection for just $3 a month if you want to. And there are other rewards there that are optional, and you can take advantage of those if you check that out. But if you'd like to support me and what I'm doing creatively, please feel free to check out patreon.com/Nepherti with 1 eye. But as I said, we're getting into the post section, which means that we are wrapping up this recording of the podcast for you guys who are watching on YouTube. So I want to thank you all for tuning into episode 70 of the podcast, and I do absolutely 100% want to thank Khang for taking the time out of his busy schedule to come on to the podcast and talk with me about Studio Penrose, about the films, about their ambition, the struggles, their achievements, and just so many other things. It's been a real pleasure getting to sit down with you, and I certainly hope that I kind of did it justice, did your interview justice. I hope. Yeah.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. No, you did great. I love these questions. I love talking about this stuff.
Oh yeah. I really enjoyed it too. Like it was like it's nice to just kind of get into that flow, and I really felt like I was just kind of in this kind of like flow of just like I really am just excited to talk to you about these things. So thank you so much again for the time. And for those of you who'd like to support Studio Penrose, go find them on Twitter, go find them on Blue Sky, join their Discord, keep up with them. They're doing some really, really great stuff, and there are plenty of short films that we just talked about that you can go watch in VRChat, or if you don't do VRChat, you can watch them on YouTube. You can look up the Studio Penrose on YouTube as well. So go check them out, go support them. They're doing really, really awesome creative things in the space, and I can't wait to see what they do next. So with that said, I want to thank you guys for watching this episode of the Sweet Talking Podcast. I've been your host, Nepherti, joined by Khang. I'm from the studio lead of Studio Penrose, and I sincerely appreciate your support in and my endeavors, and I certainly hope that I will see you in the next one. So until then, I hope you will check her out the podcast and also previous episodes. And until then, I hope you guys take care and have a good one. I'll see you in the next episode. Bye, guys. So, damn.
Look, too.
Yeah, yeah. Yep, that's